Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 611, Good Teacher and Excellent Student. Saint Woodcutter gave a hard knock on his head and said angrily, "Where would my manners be? How could I lay my hands on juniors? If I did, other people could just come and kill you too. If the older generation kill my disciple and I kill their disciple, won't the younger generations all be dead if we keep on killing like this? The rules can't be broken." When Jehuali and Chi Jui heard this, they both let out sighs of relief. They looked at Qin Mu who got beaten and they felt delighted in their hearts. "Serve you right." Qin Mu rubbed the bruise on his head and nodded. "That's right. But Fu Riluo laid his hands on me, and that she also wanted to lay his hands on us. That's why I had given Fu Riluo an axe to his forehead. He also didn't go overboard. He only used his divine art to kidnap you away and didn't really wanted to lay his hands on you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have lived until now," Saint Woodcutter said indifferently. "I had originally wanted you to get rid of these two brats, but I reckon you probably wouldn't be able to live until now. Therefore, I let Chi off. Chi don't follow the rules, but since I feed him blood and he didn't have his fill, he won't dare to provoke me. He will only drink the blood of that two brats." Jehuali and Chi Jui's faces turned ashen when they heard that. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Sacred teacher, there's no need to scare them. Let them leave this abnormal star," Saint Woodcutter said in astonishment. "You still wanted to borrow my hands to sacrifice them to the knife. Why do you want me to bring them away now?" Chi is an exiled person. He carries a heavy responsibility and will do anything to get his way. He will definitely come and find them to drink their blood. They will definitely die, and it won't go against my rules if Chi is the one that killed them. It will also suit your intention, so why not?" Qin Mu said righteously. "I was only scaring them earlier. I know Sacred Teacher would never use them as sacrifices for the knife. Sacred Teacher has the bearing of a Sacred Teacher. Me as Human Emperor and also Heavenly Devil Cult Master, I also have my own bearing. Brother Chi, Senior Brother Li are both my opponents and not Sacred Teachers. If I want them dead, it will be by my hands. If Sacred Teacher borrows Chi's hands to kill them, it goes against my Tao heart." Saint Woodcutter revealed a look of admiration and he praised. "When I said to borrow Chi's hands to kill them, it was also a small test for you. If you agreed, I would have looked down on you. Good. I shall send them back to Luofu Heaven." Qin Mu bowed towards Jehuali and Chi Jui. "In that case, I won't be seeing both senior brothers off. Even though we fight, I also admire the abilities of both. I don't want to borrow the hands of others to kill you. I will personally wield my knife some other day and send both senior brothers on your way." Jehuali and Chi Jui bowed one after another. Jehuali said solemnly, "Brother Qin is upright. You killed my bosom friend, so I have to kill you. If you die under my knife, I will break my knife and cry miserably for you." Chi Jui gave some thought and threw the 9 flying swords over. "You don't need to return that mirror to me. We shall fight just and honor some other day. You have won this time. I was restrained and didn't dare to take your life. I only wanted to fix you in place. In our next battle, I will definitely not go easy." Qin Mu kept his sword and the flying swords flew to stab into the sword pellet. He raised his hands and said, "Both of you farewell. When we meet next time, don't go easy." "I won't," both of them said in unison. Saint Woodcutter swept his sleeve and countless runes flew out to transform into a teleportation divine art, carrying the two people and transforming into a flowing light to rush into the sky from this abnormal star. Qin Mu raised his head to look and saw the flowing light changing direction in the sky, moving into the distance. He didn't know where it had flown to, but when the flowing light landed, it should be Luofu Heaven. Saint Woodcutter threw the small case over and said, "Let us see what else have your big senior brother left behind." Qin Mu jumped in shock and he was flustered. He was afraid that the God Execution mysterious knife would run out when the case drops to the ground. Just as he hugged the case tightly, countless runes swirled around him. Saint Woodcutter executed teleportation divine art and brought him to vanish. The teleportation divine art of Heavenly Saint Cult was from Saint Woodcutter. Even though he wasn't the strongest person, he was a person with matchless talent. He could create numerous strange and weird divine arts and spells, so just from those rare spells in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, one could know how high his attainments on paths, skills, and divine arts was. However, knowledge was what made him, knowledge was also what broke him. He was too knowledgeable, and thus, it was hard for him to be skilled at a certain technique. The abilities in his cultivation didn't reach a realm that was extremely high. When Qin Mu touched land again, he saw that he had returned to the shrine on God execution stage. He took a long time to escape from there, yet it only took a split second to return. Saint Woodcutter walked into the hall, and Qin Mu also hurriedly followed. He saw Saint Woodcutter was currently examining the formation Founding Master had left behind, and after a moment, Saint Woodcutter nodded his head. The information he had left behind is indeed 35,000 years ago. What had happened 35,000 years ago? Qin Mu pointed at the mural on the wall, and he said, "Sacred teacher, this is the star atlas of 35,000 years ago." Saint Woodcutter walked up and examined the star atlas. He muttered to himself for a moment, and he said, "This is the starry sky that could be observed 35,000 years ago in the southern sea of great ruins. This star atlas should have been drawn by a survivor of the Crimson Light era, for them to use as a guide to return to their homeland." Qin Mu nodded his head. That's Disciple's guess as well. The one that had wiped out the Crimson Light era should be the Celestial Heavens now. I feel Big Senior Brother is continuously tracing back to find out about the history and the truth of this Celestial Heavens. Therefore he had left us all these clues. He wanted to establish merit to become a saint. Saint Woodcutter shook his head. However, he doesn't know what a stupid thing he is doing. The closer he is to the truth, the more danger he is in. To put himself in danger is simply dumb. How can he be a saint like this? He became angrier and angrier as he spoke, and his tone subconsciously became harsher as well. Even though he seemed unconcerned about this disciple, his concern was still hidden in his actions and words. He just didn't say it out. "You said he still has some geographical map? Where are these maps?" Saint Woodcutter asked. Qin Mu flipped through Taotai Sack and took out some blueprints. The geographical maps that Big Senior Brother had shown were extremely complicated, so I drew them down in fear of forgetting them. This map is the geographical map of Great Ruins, and marked on it was the Dragon Village which Elder Qinghuang is in. And this map here is the abnormal star. The place marked is this God execution stage. Woodcutter looked at these two geographical maps before laying out the rest to look at them one by one. After a moment, his expression became grim. "Rascal, rascal, why do you want to go such dangerous places? Even I don't dare to tread in these places." He was angered and got up to pace around. Only the sounds of his clothes rustling could be heard in the shrine, and Qin Mu's gaze couldn't capture him at all. "I can't find him now. I'm being tied down by Supreme Emperor Heaven's matters, yet you still create such troubles. How do you expect me to split myself up to save you?" He muttered to himself. Qin Mu suddenly said, "Sacred teacher, since Big Senior Brother had drawn all of these pictures and marked the important places, he must have been to these dangerous places before and left clues there for us to find. I feel that Big Senior Brother is definitely still alive." Saint Woodcutter was slightly stunned, and he stopped pacing around. He muttered, "What you said is logical, it's logical. Being worried has clouded my judgment, and I didn't think about this point. He must be alive still. If he could still use star sand to draw these geographical maps, it means he is still in the world. This worrisome fellow." Qin Mu felt a warmth in his heart, and he smiled. "Master is so worried about your disciple, so how could a disciple not repay the benefaction of the master? For Sacred Teacher to be so worried for Big Senior Brother, if I'm also missing one day, Sacred Teacher will definitely also be so worried for me. You think too much. Don't be self-sentimental." Saint Woodcutter gave him a stare and shook his head. "Even if you die at the edge of the horizon, I won't go and find you or even miss you. If you are a troublemaker like your Big Senior Brother, you can die further for all I care." Qin Mu said with a smile, "Sharp tongue but a soft heart. Where exactly have Big Senior Brother searched to? Why isn't he back yet? How much does Sacred Teacher knows about Founding Emperor, High Emperor, Crimson Light, Dragon Han?" These celestial heavens that are already wiped out. Not much. Saint Woodcutter shook his head. If I knew a lot, we wouldn't have been caught off guard. Founding Emperor wouldn't be hiding in Carefree Village until now. All the past dynasties had suddenly crumbled during their most prosperous moment, and there are definitely many secrets inside waiting to be uncovered. He sighed and said, I want to go Carefree Village to ask Founding Emperor why doesn't he want to make a comeback? Why isn't he willing to fight again? Yet I also don't know the path to Carefree Village. If you ever return to Carefree Village one day, help me ask him. Qin Mu nodded his head. Disciple will definitely ask him. Saint Woodcutter said, destroy these geographical maps. Your big senior brother doesn't know the severity of things and only know how to barge around. If you follow him to find the truth, you will definitely die. Qin Mu revealed a smile. These geographical maps are already all in Disciple's head. Saint Woodcutter gave him a stare and Qin Mu smiled silently. Saint Woodcutter gave a snort and swept his sleeves as he walked out of the shrine. He examined the surroundings and saw numerous corpses of gods on the stone steps. This god execution stage is the god execution stage in the celestial heavens of an emperor's throne-strong practitioner. It has already been raised to great curse that's even fiercer than this knife in this case. This mountain is inauspicious. It's best to destroy it. Let me slash it apart with one axe and see if it still can swallow the blood of gods. Behind him, the huge axe swirled with a hum and rose from his back. The axe gradually rose from his back and became bigger and bigger. With overflowing divine might, the blade of the axe faced down as it hung in the sky. Saint Woodcutter said calmly, go down the mountain first. I shall split this mountain. Qin Mu didn't dare neglect his words. He hurriedly went down the mountain. Just as he walked to the stone steps, he heard a rumble from behind and Qin Mu hurriedly turned to look back. He saw the 3 heads and 6 arms Qi attacking towards Saint Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter seemed to not have noticed, and when Qi rushed to his face, he suddenly opened his 5 fingers to welcome Qi's attack. Numerous runes exploded forth from his palm and they swirled. Before Qi's attack could even land on him, Qi suddenly disappeared. Saint Woodcutter raised his hand and grabbed that huge axe that still hung behind him. He stood beside the dumbfounded Qin Mu and said, what are you staring blankly at? This is the god execution stage of an emperor's throne-strong practitioner. I can't split it. I only did it to lure him out. Qin Mu hurriedly caught up with him and probed. In that case, where did sacred teacher send Qi to? Saint Woodcutter revealed a smile. Supreme Emperor Heaven, the territory of the devil race. He has a grudge with the devil race that is as deep as the sea. Qin Mu was stunned and he suddenly bowed to the ground while saying sincerely, disciple has learned. I will definitely learn well and not let down sacred teacher's teachings. I will work hard to be an outstanding heavenly saint cult master like sacred teacher is. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 6:12 20,000 Years of Imparting Sainthood. Saint Woodcutter accepted his bow and he said, I don't take in many disciples. I only taught princes in the past and they don't need to pay respects to me as their master. Therefore my official disciples are only you and your big senior brother. Compared to your big senior brother, you are much younger and inexperienced, so you really need to learn well. I'm not teaching you to learn bad. I'm just teaching you to not to be at a disadvantage. Qin Mu blinked his eyes. He didn't seem like a sacred teacher and instead, he was like the elders of disabled elderly village. Sacred teacher, what is a saint? Qin Mu asked. Saint is a kind of frame of mind. They came to the bottom of God execution stage and Saint Woodcutter examined this divine mountain while saying calmly, I had once told your big senior brother you need to establish 3 things to become a saint, establish your ideas in writing, establish a cult, and establish your merit. Once this 3 is established, your frame of mind will reach a realm so high that no one could be a match for you, purely in regards to the frame of mind. A saint needs to have ideas in writings, only then can he establish a cult indoctrination, to teach all lives and solve their questions by imparting his teachings, to get rid of the thistles and thorns, to open up a path for them. Qin Mu was stunned and he cried out, establish cult indoctrination? Isn't it establishing heavenly saint cult and imparting the teachings? Saint Woodcutter shook his head and said, it's not establishing a cult, It's establishing a cult doctrine. Establishing a cult is too shallow. When you create a sect, there will be struggles between sects and they will be struggles between ideas in writings. In that case, ideas in writing will cease to exist. Qin Mu's brain was blown, and he suddenly remembered those previous cult masters that were staying in Fengdu, and he couldn't help imagining tears streaking down their faces. They were proud of their identity as Heavenly Saint Cult Master, but they didn't know that everything was wrong when it came to Saint Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter walked down this divine mountain, and he would grab chunks of rocks from time to time. The huge rocks were melted straight with his magic power, and they transformed into stone pillars that were covered with fancy markings. They were planted at the bottom of the divine mountain with a strange formation. Establishing cult is establishing cult indoctrination. How do you establish cult indoctrination? To open education, to build schools, to spread talent, to do actual work, to research paths, skills, and divine arts, all for the everyday use of common people. He said softly as he refined teleportation stone pillars. When a country is weak, they try to reform to become strong, strengthening the country. His refining method wasn't as superior as Mute, but it was extremely fast as well. He quickly imprinted the runes for the teleportation divine art in the stone pillars. When the people are weak, impart teachings to benefit people, strengthening the people. When soldiers are weak, reform and improve the weapons, strengthening the people. Muddle-headed ruler, make a remonstration, make a serious assertion, advising the ruler to change. If the ruler doesn't change, make a second remonstration. If there's still no change, elect a new ruler. No path to heaven, make a reform, change the heavenly laws to suit the world. If heaven doesn't change, reform to seek a change. If it still doesn't change, cut down the heaven to establish the path. As he said in detail, they subconsciously walked half around the mountain. Qin Mu listened attentively, and when Saint Woodcutter had finished saying his ideology, Qin Mu suddenly said, "Sacred teacher, the requirement for a saint is too high. I carefully recall all the people I have met before and heard before, but no one could reach the requirements of a saint. Are you able to do all these?" Saint Woodcutter stopped in his footsteps, and the mountain rocks in midair melted to form stone pillars. Saint Woodcutter didn't move at all, and the markings on the stone pillars also stopped transforming. Qin Mu felt uneasy, and he cursed himself for being too talkative. He sneaked a glance and saw tears streaking down this middle-aged man that donned a woodcutter's garb. "I had once thought I could do it." Saint Woodcutter's voice was a little hoarse as he said sorrowfully, "I once thought I could become a saint, and others also refer to me as saint. I thought I could establish cult indoctrination and strengthen ourselves through reform, to strengthen founding emperor empire, to strengthen the weak people, to let people have remarkable abilities, to change the weak military and let them have power which could awe our enemies. I still thought I could ensure the ruler wouldn't be muddle-headed, ensure a path into heaven, and even ensure I could establish merit and defeat degeneration. The last 3 points, I failed to do so." Thump. That stone pillar that still wasn't refined fell to the ground and stabbed into the mud. Saint Woodcutter held onto the pillar with his right arm, and his head was buried in his elbow. Tears flowed down his face, and he didn't let Qin Mu see him losing his composure. "I've lost. I didn't manage to stop founding emperor from going to Carefree Village. I have let the ruler become muddle-headed. I've lost. I thought I could change the laws and the paths, to change the path of heaven. Yet the heaven wiped out founding emperor empire and sent off founding emperor era. I've lost. I didn't manage to establish merit in that final battle. I've lost. Qin Mu, I ain't the saint you were looking for. I also can't teach you anything. I'm only a failure." Qin Mu stared at him blankly, and the same emotion was brewing inside of his chest. When Saint Woodcutter's reform was at its most flourishing state, founding emperor suddenly retreated and built Carefree Village without fighting a win-or-die battle. Thus, Woodcutter's fighting spirit became silent. He saw founding emperor retreating and looked at the founding emperor empire which they painstakingly built turn into ashes. He had to look at his comrades fighting and dying for the same ideals and looked at them getting beheaded, spraying their warm blood onto the once familiar ground. He looked at those comrades who anticipated founding emperor to descend again and lead them back into battle dying from old age, looking at the people of that era dying generations after generations, having new faces replacing the old ones. The The setback and pain in his heart was something other people couldn't imagine. Qin Mu suddenly shouted, "Sacred teacher, can you impart the path of the saint to me?" Saint Woodcutter used the sleeves to wipe his tears, and he turned around to look at him. Qin Mu said excitedly, "I want to inherit your teachings and continue walking down this path, to continue the reform, cutting down the ruler if they are muddle-headed, cutting down the heaven if there's no path." Saint Woodcutter's face was bleak and shook his head. "You can't." Qin Mu's hot-bloodedness was quenched, and he gripped his fists in anger. "Why can't I? Big Senior Brother's comprehension and ability to understand is slightly bad and comprehended established cult, as establishing heavenly saint cult, but I'm not that stupid." Saint Woodcutter shook his head. "Your Big Senior Brother is a little stupid and a little dumb, but you are no better. Your blood easily rushes to your head and you bury yourself in work. Even though you are crafty sometimes, you lack focus. Your temper is jumpy and you feel everything is fresh to you, wanting to study more about them. Even though you have your thinking isn't deep enough. Even though you have belief, your belief isn't stable enough, your Tao heart still isn't strong as mountains and rivers, until the step where it doesn't change. You aren't cut out for becoming a saint, at the least, you right now still isn't enough." Qin Mu said loudly, "I can change, I can learn. I can't wait anymore." Saint Woodcutter revealed a warm smile and his voice became gentle. "Good disciple, I really can't wait that long anymore." Qin Mu went into a daze. Saint Woodcutter continued to refine the stone pillar properly before walking forward. Qin Mu followed him silently and looked at him finish refining the teleportation pillar one by one. After some time, Saint Woodcutter finally finished the layout and he took a glance at the dejected Qin Mu. He said with a smile, "Don't pull a long face. If I didn't know much about you, I would really think that your Tao heart is really that weak like that black tiger does. Let's go up the mountain." The dejection on Qin Mu's face vanished and he followed him back up to the peak of this god execution stage. Saint Woodcutter executed the teleportation divine art and stone pillars shone brightly as the runes imprinted on the stone pillars gave off light. The runes were shown into midair and they transformed into strange beautiful writings and runes. These runes connected in midair and they swirled faster and faster. To move this entire god execution stage, even an existence like Saint Woodcutter needed to first transform his teleportation divine art into a formation first. Only then was he able to teleport it away. Light burst forth among the rumblings and god execution stage rose up with a rumble, swirling and flying away along with the light. Qin Mu stood on this divine mountain and he turned back to look at that abnormal star moving further and further away. It quickly vanished from his line of sight. In the surroundings were boundless and dark space which was empty and desolate. He could see incomparably fine stars from time to time. Qin Mu suddenly said, "Sacred teacher, I feel there's a person whose aptitude and comprehension is better than me, and he's suitable your criteria. I want to recommend him to meet you." Saint Woodcutter was slightly stunned and he broke into a smile. "All right. However, you don't have to call me sacred teacher anymore. Just call me teacher." Teacher. The torrent of light shone down from the sky of Luofu heaven and shone down on a piece of land in front of a sacrificial altar. Countless incomparably complicated runes appeared on the ground under the shine of the light and they changed continuously. When the light vanished, a huge and majestic god execution stage suddenly appeared. Saint Woodcutter walked down god execution stage and the huge axe behind him flew up to slash open a door that reaches Supreme Emperor Heaven. "Bring him to meet me." Qin Mu bowed. "Yes, teacher." Supreme Emperor Heaven, Li City. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and a bunch of scholars from all the academies were designing spirit weapons for invading cities and large-scale battles. Qin Mu walked over and said to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, "Imperial Preceptor, Saint Woodcutter wants to see you." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's body trembled greatly as he looked at him in surprise and delight. The two of them came to Luofu Heaven and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his head to look at the majestic and tall sacrificial altar. On the altar, a middle-aged man wearing a woodcutter's garb was currently standing there. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's mind shook and he tidied up his appearance. He wanted to seek an audience when Saint Woodcutter's booming voice rang out from the top of the altar like a bell. "Imperial Preceptor of Eternal Peace, I have 3 questions. Once you answer all 3, you can come up the altar to meet me. Step up now. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked up the stone steps and came to 1/3 of the altar. Suddenly, Saint Woodcutter's voice came down. First question, your original aspiration. Answer. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stopped in his footsteps and he said loudly, to ordain conscience for heaven and earth, to secure life and fortune for the people, to continue lost teachings for past sages, to establish peace for all future generations. That's my original aspiration. On the sacrificial altar, Saint Woodcutter was silent for a moment and he said, step up. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continued walking to the 2/3 level of the altar and Saint Woodcutter's voice came down again. Second question, your Tao heart. Answer. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stopped in his footsteps and he said meaningfully with high spirits, never changing my original aspiration. Tao heart will remain forever strong. Step up. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continued to ascend the altar and he was almost at the top. Third question, do you know you will die because of this, losing your reputation and the later generation will forget you or even hate you? This undertaking, this path, not only could it destroy your life, it will also destroy your reputation, making you a nobody from today onwards. I know. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bowed. I willing to do so. I have a clear conscience and I won't have any grievances or regrets. Saint Woodcutter revealed a smile. I have taught countless people, but I've only taken in 2 disciples. Yet these 2 disciples have never received my inheritance and true teaching. Instead, it's the flower outside the door that had bloomed. Come up. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor ascended up the last step and came to the peak of this sacrificial altar to face Saint Woodcutter. Dong! The huge axe behind Saint Woodcutter fell to the ground and stabbed into the ground. This woodcutter sat with his legs wide open on the back of the axe and placed his hands on his knees. You can now formally pay your respects as an apprentice. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor grabbed his green clothes up and he knelt down while saying solemnly, River Tomb Scholar pays my respects to teacher. Qin Mu looked up at the sacrificial altar and tears unknowingly wetted his cheeks. He had witnessed this inheritance of the saint crossing from founding emperor to eternal peace, these 2 eras. The responsibility of the saint was now passed on from one era to the shoulders of a person from the next era. It didn't have a shocking sight or words that stirred people's hearts, yet he still teared up from being moved. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 613, Hatred that was hard to dispel. The path of the saint. There were always people who possessed ideals and beliefs that others their age and even generation didn't possess. These people harbored feelings and fighting spirits that other people on their age and generation didn't have. They spoke what people their age and generation couldn't and did things people their age and generation couldn't. Maybe in the eyes of people their age and generation or even the future generation, they might seem dumb to be offering their lives to a belief that seemed impossible. Yet those that pushed history and pushed generations to advance were these people with unwavering belief and ideals that seemed laughable. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor became Saint Woodcutter's disciple on the sacrificial altar. Saint Woodcutter stretched out his hands to hold him up by the elbow. He said with a smile, maybe your success in the future may be even bigger and even higher than mine. When you look at the current me in the future, you will become my teacher. Qin Mu walked up the sacrificial altar and saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor doing the disciple rite as he stood beside Saint Woodcutter. He said with a smile, Teacher, junior brother, I'm a step late. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was astonished, then his frown turned into a smile. Second senior brother. Qin Mu's face instantly turned black. I think Heavenly King should still call me Cult Master Qin. Second senior brother sounds very weird. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed loudly. Qin Mu was stunned. He then revealed a smile. The time he had known Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor for wasn't long, and he only met him after entering Imperial College. Only afterward did they start talking. In the past, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was a man who didn't joke around. He had his firm belief and Tao heart, being able to do anything to achieve what he wanted. His thoughts were as deep as the sea and his face was calm like an old well. No expression could be seen on his face. He was like a perfect god that had no human feelings. However, after being in contact with him for so long, Qin Mu gradually discovered the human emotions on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He was gradually changing from a god into a human. And when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed loudly, Qin Mu felt that his Tao heart had suddenly crossed into another realm, a realm that he couldn't understand. It was like God and yet not God, like human and yet not human. He was within the 7 affections and 6 desires, yet he was outside of it as well. He had the absolute rationality of God, yet he didn't have it as well. Such a person, Qin Mu already couldn't understand him. Imperial Preceptor's comprehension is indeed more outstanding than mine, having such a drastic improvement in his frame of mind after meeting Teacher Woodcutter for just this short while. As expected of the saint that appears once every 500 years. Qin Mu consoled himself and said, "However, lucky I'm the Overlord body. As long as I work hard enough, I can activate all the potential of the Overlord body and surpass him." Saint Woodcutter said, "Qin Mu, you can return to Supreme Emperor Heaven already. I need a long time to discuss with your junior brother." Qin Mu hesitated and asked, "What about Senior Tiger and Granny? Did their fight with Yu Luosha and Mu Tuluo have a result?" Saint Woodcutter said, "Mu Tuluo wore the clothes of that woman and he got beaten to death by the Black Tiger. On the other hand, Yu Luosha got saved by Fu Riluo. That woman and Black Tiger returned back to Supreme Emperor Heaven." "As I thought." Qin Mu revealed a smile. Saint Woodcutter opened a passage to Supreme Emperor Heaven for him, and Qin Mu dilly-dallied, not willing to go in. "Teacher, I'll just listen at the side, I won't speak. As the senior brother, if there's anything junior brother doesn't know, I can also give him some pointers. Am I right, Junior?" Saint Woodcutter grabbed him up by the collar and stuffed him into the passage. Qin Mu planned to run back to listen, but the passage had already closed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked with a smile, "Teacher, why don't you let senior brother Qin listen?" "He's not suitable," Saint Woodcutter said. "His nature is actually not suitable for our path. What kind of person do you think your second senior brother is?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor muttered for a moment and he said, "Playful, eager, can't sit still, always rushing ahead with a hot head, yet he's still cunning and meticulous. He's very smart and can think what others can't. He frequently can think of ideas that even I couldn't think of. Furthermore, he's also very magnanimous, having a very wide mind. He is also very confident, having confidence that's close to crazy. In his heart, he always feels he's the number 1 in the world, although he claims to be number 2. However, in terms of confidence, he is indeed the number 1 in the world." Rather detailed observations. Saint Woodcutter rubbed his palms and praised, "You understand him more than I do. I also felt this way about him. As a saint, he isn't suitable." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. "Second senior brother is indeed not suitable. What about big senior brother?" "Your big senior brother is another kind of person," Saint Woodcutter said. "He is a person with great willpower and he's very steady. As long as he set his mind on a goal, no one can pull him back. It's also because of that which is why he had slightly miscomprehension to the path of the saint. On the path of the saint, both of your senior brothers are inferior to you. Follow me to cultivation for a few years. I will teach you everything I have comprehended." He said slowly, "My willpower is low and I can never cross the pit in my heart. I'm always falling into the memories of Founding Emperor era, and I also have a knot regarding Founding Emperor's escape that can't be undone. You are different, you don't have this pit. You will learn what I have comprehended and you will just cross this pit. At that time, you shall become a true saint." His eyes became bright and he said with a smile, "For these few years, focus your mind on comprehending. No matter if it's Supreme Emperor Heaven or Eternal Peace, do not think about them, do not get involved. Focus on crossing the pit that I can't." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor acknowledged. The two of them sat across each other on the sacrificial altar. Supreme Emperor Heaven. Decaying City of the Devil Race. Decaying City was originally one of the 64 god cities of Supreme Emperor Heaven, and it had undergone huge renovation after landing into the hands of the Devil Race. Countless devils lived here, and they forged all kinds of devil god statues and devil palaces. This was considered the belly of the devil race's territory, as it was one of the earlier places to fall into their hands. Thus, there were numerous devils, and it was hard for humans to even find their way here. The devils here lived in peace and worked happily. There were even devil gods guarding the city and countless humans enslaved here, making the humans serve the devils. Thus, they were quite well off. When Xianxia was teleported to this place, Decaying City was currently celebrating a traditional festival, sacrifice festival. There were countless devil youths carrying livestock while others beat drums and gongs. They danced strange dances that were accompanied by strange music that was filled with exoticism. There were also female devils with 4 faces, 4 arms and 4 breasts dancing on the festooned cars, attracting cheers with their alluring poses. They had to roam the city for the sacrifice. The sacrifice group raised the livestock and danced as they walked one round throughout the city. Only then did they raise the livestock to each and every sacrificial altar in the city. On the altars were devil gods that were smiling and looking at their clansmen celebrating. As this moment, the strong devil youths would bring the livestock up the sacrificial altar and offer their sacrifices to the devil god. The first one who brought the sacrifice up was a huge honor. And there wasn't just one group fighting to offer their sacrifices. It was the competition between hundreds to thousands of devil families in the city, thus it was very lively. A streak of light descended down from the sky and she landed on one of the sacrificial altars. "Old schemer, how dare he scheme me?" His voice was like a clap of thunder, reverberating through the lively sacrifice festival. All of the devils stopped and countless gazes landed on Xianxia. On the sacrificial altar, that devil god was currently laughing, and he was ready to grab those offerings the youths were offering. The appearance of Xianxia had also caught him off guard. Under Xiaxia's feet, the teleportation runes formed by the shining light were gradually fading away. He slowly raised his 3 heads up and looked around. Devil race. This executioner of the Crimson Light era suddenly blew up, and his 3 heads gave off a world-shaking roar. Devil race. My clansmen had crossed billions of stars and crossed countless deadly zones, finally coming to the vicinity of our ancestral land after much effort. It was the devil race. It was the devil race that slaughtered their way in our planet, killing my clansmen, wiping out my race. His dried up and yellowish hair rose up and swept out in all directions like tens of thousands of yellow-colored swords. This attack only took an instant. In a radius of 300 yards, all of the devils held onto their throats. Someone raised his hands and he saw warm devil blood on the palm he had used to cover his neck. Someone lowered their head and his head suddenly slid off his neck. In front of the sacrificial altar, the gorgeous canopy of a festooned car slowly slid off from the flowery poles. The cuts on the poles were very clean. The roof of a house suddenly slid off as well and crashed onto the ground with a loud rumble. Next, the top of the palaces started to slide down one by one while the roofs of the houses also slid down as well. In the radius of 300 yards, heads fell to the ground and blood was spurting everywhere. Countless chi and blood transformed into red lines to flow to Xianxia from their thoracic cavity. On the sacrificial altar that Xianxia descended on, that devil god avoided this move of his, and he couldn't help breaking down when he saw such a sight. With an angry roar, he stretched out his hands to grab 2 devil god weapons to attack Xianxia. Xiaxia's 6 arms were like a storm, striking countless times in just a short instant. He shattered the devil god weapon and shattered the body of that devil god as well. The other devil gods flew over from other sacrificial altars to come attacking. One of the devil gods recognized Xianxia and he shouted mournfully, "It's him! I was him who had brought those planets to descend on our Luofu heaven. It's him that had wiped out our Luofu heaven. It's him who had killed our previous respectable king. Die!" Countless voices came from Decaying City and uncountable strong devil practitioners rushed at Xianxia with anger that overflowed to the sky. Not long later, Decaying City was completely silent. Xiaxia's 6 eyes were crimson red as he breathed heavily. As this moment, he had already had his fill of chi and blood. He had already recovered to his peak and by logic, he could totally leave and stop killing. However, he still continued his massacre, killing everyone in this devil city until there were no life forms that could stand up other than him. I've brought my clansmen to float in the space for thousands of years, all just to find our ancestral land. It was you guys, you killed my clansmen, and only I was left. His 6 arms opened wide and he stretched out in all directions to grab. The devil god weapon that he had broken collided in his surroundings and formed a huge metal sphere. Qi's 3 heads spewed fire and refined the broken pieces of devil god weapons, smelting them and forging them into 6 bright divine knives. With the 6 knives in his hands, he looked into the distance where the devil gods from the other cities were hurrying over. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 6:14, The Tree of Light in the Night Sky. Sounds of fight rang out as numerous devil god roared angrily. They attacked Qi. After a bloody battle, corpses piled up like a mountain, and even she couldn't help feeling tired. What he cultivated was Anasrava fighting god technique, and this kind of technique seized the chi and blood of others to maintain oneself to always be at peak performance. Furthermore, with 3 heads and 6 arms, his close combat could be said to have reached a perfect realm. As long as enemies were injured, blood would flow continuously and the blood lost would pour into his body. As the battle dragged on, it was more beneficial for him. This god technique could be said to be one of the most outstanding technique during Crimson Light era. Back then, many people cultivated this, and the number of gods cultivating this was naturally not little as well. Thus the gods of Crimson Light era usually had the appearance of 3 heads and 6 arms. Anasrava fighting god technique had 2 flaws, and the first was that it took a huge burden on the body, so one would feel their corporeal body becoming tired. However, their chi and blood would become more and more vigorous. The second place that was lacking was the divine art. Since it was a close combat technique, his attainments in divine arts weren't especially high. This executioner of Crimson Light era sat on top of the pile of corpses as night fell. There were numerous flames around, and those were the flames left behind by divine arts, giving off trails of smoke into the night sky. Decaying city was broken. Paper boats were currently sailing over from the darkness, and the messengers of death on the boats came to fetch the souls of the dead. She looked at these messengers of death that had suddenly appeared expressionlessly, and he didn't question anything. He was the executioner of Crimson Light celestial heavens after all. He was already long used to seeing this kind of sights. He sat on the corpse mountain and looked into the distance. There was a 3-faced devil god walking towards him, and as he walked, that devil god was adjusting his state. It was a terrifying opponent with extraordinary abilities. Respectable King Fu Riluo. She stepped on the head of one of the corpses under him while his other leg just hung down freely. He was also stabilizing his breath and regaining his composure. He was trying his best to suppress his anger and waiting for the moment to unleash it all. His opponent was the respectable king of the devil race. He had once slain another respectable king, and he had relied on God Execution Mysterious Knife. He knew how powerful and terrifying this kind of opponent was, so he needed to perfect his frame of mind. He couldn't give his opponent any chance at all. His anger and his thirst for revenge provided him with power. However, it could also make him lose his rationality. Only by suppressing his anger and waiting for the moment where life and death were determined could he deal a fatal blow to his enemy by suddenly bursting forth with the anger he had suppressed for so long. At that time, he would be able to fight to his heart's content and shed his anger. The successful revenge would bring immense joy to his Tao heart. From the distance, respectable King Fu Riluo was still walking over, and if one didn't see clearly, he didn't look like a devil god of the devil race. On the other hand, he looked like a handsome middle-aged man that was learned and refined. As he walked, his arms moved up and down as he executed divine arts after divine arts. However, these divine arts only gathered and didn't disperse. They held back their power without releasing. The frequency of his legs taking strides wasn't fast, but his speed was extremely fast. It gave others the illusion that he was rushing down from a high mountain. This was a kind of aura, an invincible aura. His outward appearance didn't rely on the frequency of his legs striding out. The frequency of his footsteps was very slow, yet he gave off an outward appearance of being unrivaled. The speed of his divine arts accumulating was extremely fast, and this made she felt pressurized. The pressure grew stronger and stronger until he couldn't sit any longer. Behind him, layers of space suddenly bloomed and made decaying city move further and further away from him. Not only that, the corpses near the corpse mountain were also gradually moving further away. Fu Riluo's divine arts have already made preparation for the fierce battle that was about to occur, and that was to shift the corpses of these devils so he couldn't borrow any qi and blood. If he still doesn't make a move, Fu Riluo's invincible aura would be complete. Qi Shi rose into the air. His 6 hands wielded the 6 long golden knives and swung them up and down, exploding with all kinds of battle technique divine arts. The battle technique divine arts were like a torrent formed from waves, and the waves overlapped each other continuously. As they accumulated, the wave of knife lights piled up higher and higher. He took a step and his speed became faster and faster. With every step, he walked on air that was 300 yards above the ground. Yet depressions in the ground suddenly appeared as though they were dried-up lakes with the shape of footsteps. The ground trembled and dried-up lakes with shapes of footsteps appeared one after another. Even the mountains sunk down from being stepped on. He closed in on Fu Riluo, who was walking calmly at an incomparably terrifying speed. The footstep lakes appeared quickly in front of Fu Riluo, and they were only 600 yards away from Fu Riluo. 2 terrifying existences finally collided. Far away in a city tower of Li City, Qin Mu was just preparing to rest when he saw a light coming from the west at this moment. In the west, that place was the territory of the devil race. The youth standing on the city tower looked into the distance while light burst forth in the night sky. Even though the distance from here to there was far, the light was still extremely piercing to the eyes. That light was like a very sturdy tree, and the huge tree suddenly rose steeply as the torrenting light rushed into the sky. Even in Li City, he could see the light pillar growing upwards. Next, incomparably bright branches branched out from this bare tree, and the tree branches showed dazzling shapes of lightning. Qin Mu looked and tried to use 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill to see the activity there, yet he couldn't see the situation there clearly at all with his current eyesight. With such a far distance, he couldn't even see 100,000 feet mountain, much less the figures of gods. But he could well imagine how intense and violent the situation of the battle was. Could Fu Riluo and Qi Shi have crossed hands? He thought to himself. Everyone in Li City was alarmed, and they all flew into midair or scaled high places to see this rare sight. After having the first branch, light burst out from the trunk as the second branch of light spread outwards, followed by the third, the fourth. More and more branches stretched out from the tree of light, and they became more and more concentrated. In just a few breaths' time, Qin Mu, all the divine arts practitioners, and gods in Li City could see a huge tree of light rising in the dark sky on the west. The crown of the tree was densely packed and swaying imposingly. Right at this moment, the tree of light suddenly became dim and vanished. Darkness returned back to the west. The battle has ended? Qin Mu's heart was still pounding, and he muttered, Fu Riluo and Qi Shi, who had won? I don't know. A voice came from his back. Qin Mu hurriedly turned back to take a look, and he saw true God Pangyu, God Xianxia, and the rest of the gods in Supreme Emperor Heaven behind him. These gods had appeared like a phantom, and it must be because the city tower was the highest, so they had all came here to take a look at the strange sight in the west. True God Pangyu shook his head and said, Even though I had fought Fu Riluo numerous times, they had mostly ended in my defeat. There are not many people that could be a match for him. With my experience, Fu Riluo had already executed all he could in that battle just now, but it's hard to say if he had won or lost. Even if he had won, it would be a bitter victory. Qin Mu's heart started to itch. I really want to go there and take a look. True God Pangyu became alert, and he said, Cult Master Qin, Imperial Preceptor, and Heavenly Teacher are both not here. It's best if you don't create any trouble. Qin Mu said solemnly, True God, I have already come to Supreme Emperor Heaven for half a year. Have you seen me creating trouble before? Don't accuse me. True God Pangyu was full of smiles, and he nodded his head. Yes, I understand everything Cult Master Qin says. My words were inappropriate. May Cult Master forgive me. God Xianxia came to his ears and whispered, City Lord, have you forgotten how he smashed the sons of our Supreme Emperor Heaven? Shush! Pang Yu suppressed his voice and said, He doesn't have a grasp of what he did, but do you not as well? He's heavenly teacher's disciple. You and I can't provoke him. What's more, he even got Imperial Preceptor to create 2 sons for us. They are much nicer looking than the previous sons. God Xianxia immediately shut his mouth. Qin Mu looked at the darkness in the west that was growing thicker and thicker. He gripped his fist tightly and suppressed his voice while saying excitedly, Fu Riluo and Qi Shi are both heavily injured now. Now is the best time to take their heads. How I want to pick up Fu Riluo and Qi Shi's head. True God Pang Yu was startled and he threw a glance at God Xianxia. Watch him. Don't let them create trouble. Xianxia nodded his head repeatedly. On the other side, outside of Decaying City, Fu Riluo landed on the ground and he turned around to vanish into the darkness. Qi Shi also landed on the ground with a stumble. He suppressed the blood filled his chest, but he still couldn't suppress it. His body suddenly split apart and spoiled blood spurted out violently. His 3 heads and 3 mouths were spewing blood continuously. His body shriveled up in a short moment and the 6 knives in his hands shattered. Both Fu Riluo and he had indeed suffered heavy injuries, and both of them had never said a word from the start until the end. There were only dull sounds of fighting, and in that short period of time where they fought, they managed to heavily injure each other and almost exhausted each other completely. The reason why Fu Riluo turned to leave was because he had numerous wounds on his body, and he was worried Qi Shi would take the chance to seize his qi and blood. Therefore retreating was the best method to slay Qi Shi. He just needs devil gods without wounds to come forward, and they would be able to take Qi Shi's life easily. As the sage of the devil race, he was very clear, much clearer than anyone. Qi Shi also understood why Fu Riluo had retreated, so he knew he couldn't stay there any longer. Devil gods would probably come not long later to take his life. Yet his qi and blood had withered, so he couldn't walk much further. He would be caught up by the devil god, and when that time comes, his death would be due. Am I going to die here? Qi Shi knelt down and his 3 heads hung down. His heart was depressed. I haven't even returned back to the ancestral land, haven't returned to my clansmen in hiding, to tell them about the situation of the ancestral land. I can't accept this. Far away in Decaying City, a lump of black gas floated to and fro among the corpses like a phantom. Sometimes it was like a small tree, sometimes it was like a stubborn rock. There were also small flags around this lump of black gas that floated around, absorbing the devil qi, claiming the broken souls that the messengers of death didn't want. This lump of black gas floated and have numerous transformation. Sometimes it would even land in the flames from the divine arts, turning into flame. Not long later, this lump of black gas tried to come near Qi Shi and seemed to be hesitating. It obviously wanted to come up and check if Qi Shi was dead, to scavenge some wealth. Yet he was worried. You are a human, Qi Shi suddenly said. That lump of devil gas was astonished and turned into a bush in the next instant. Qi Shi continued saying, You don't have to transform in front of me. I've seen through your disguise. If you can save me, I will take you in as my disciple. I'll teach you the supreme art of Crimson Light Era, Anasrava fighting god technique, granting you a huge benefit. That bush shook and the bush disappeared. A youth with 2 deer legs appeared in front of Qi Shi and he bent his legs to bow. Pan Gong Tso pays my respects to Master. Master, don't worry. I have been blending in the devil race for a few months now. In terms of ability to escape, no one would dare to say they are better than me. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 6:15, Unrivaled Dharma. Early in the morning, Qin Mu came to the monastery of Buddhism that was located at Li City and knocked on the door. He sought an audience and said, I'm here to meet old Ma. The monk that received him hurriedly went back to inform. The reason why Qin Mu said old Ma and not Rulai Ma was because Rulai Ma was the leader of Buddhism. He needed to oversee Great Thunderclap Monastery and promote Buddhism. Meanwhile, old Ma is his kin. One was identity and one was kinship. Coming to meet Rulai Ma, he needed to bring out the identity as human emperor and heavenly saint cult master. To meet old Ma, his identity was a child raised up by old Ma. After a moment, the receiving monk came forward and said, Old Ma invites you. Qin Mu revealed a smile and he followed him into the monastery. This monastery was given to him by the gods of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery built a monastery and cultivated daily. Qin Mu raised his head to look and he saw 20 heavens hanging hazily above the monastery. There were still numerous monks under the 20 heavens that were chanting scriptures continuously. The chantings would collide in the sky and transform into trails of Buddha light, pouring into the 20 heavens. 20 heavens were the heavens of Buddhism, and the apparition of the 20 heavens that was floating above the monastery wasn't real. Qin Mu pulled back his gaze. At this moment, he saw a simple elder who had removed his Rulai's cassock and looking at him with a smile. Old Ma. Qin Mu became agitated. Ever since Old Ma became Rulai Ma of Great Thunderclap Monastery, they couldn't meet each other as frequently anymore. When he took off his cassock, he was meeting him as a family member, so how could he not be agitated? However, this place was the Buddhist rite of Great Thunderclap Monastery and there were monks everywhere. He needed to control the feelings in his heart and not bring any trouble to Old Ma, troubles regarding the mind. Grandpa Ma, didn't you guys already contact the 20 heavens long ago? Qin Mu was stabilizing his frame of mind and he said curiously, "Why are you still trying to get into contact with the 20 heavens? Could the Buddhas of Buddha realm not have imparted techniques and skills of a higher level?" They had imparted, but it wasn't much. Old Ma led them to the side of those monks that were chanting and trying to make a connection with the Buddha realm. He saw that the interior of this monastery was very wide and close to 1,000 monks were sitting in the lotus position. Some sat on the flat land and some sat in the air. There were even some that sat on top of the pagoda. The intention of the Buddha realm is for us to focus on cultivating, to not dabble into the struggle of the mortal world. They didn't seem to want to bother with the mortal world, and it was like as if there was a lot of taboo. My intention was for them to impart more profound techniques. Buddha have the heart to save the people of the world, so how could they not help when they see mortals falling into trouble? Qin Mu looked around. Among the 1,000 monks they were male, female, humans and demons. They were all chanting and not giving peace to the 20 heavens. This kind of fighting method was like a method of harassment. By chanting the names of Buddha, the Buddha would be able to hear, and these monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery were doing just that. There were originally a few Buddhas who had imparted their skills, but afterward, nobody else imparted their teachings anymore. I wanted to invite them down to the lower bound, but they also aren't willing to come down and assist us. Old Ma shook his head. In my opinion, they aren't actually afraid of being tainted by the mortal world. They are fearing some terrifying existence. Even though they have profound realms and profound techniques, their frame of mind has already dropped. Just a few days ago, the Buddhas of the Buddha realm couldn't take the harassment any longer and suggested to have a contest of Dharma between Son of Buddha. Contest of Dharma? Qin Mu instantly became excited and he said with a smile, "How do they compete? It's just picking out the best disciple of Buddha and see whose attainments in Dharma is higher. This kind of competition takes place across space. I've sent out Zhan Kong." Old Ma raised his hand and pointed. "Zhan Kong is there. He has already defeated a few of the Son of Buddha from the 20 heavens." Qin Mu raised his head to look and he saw Devil Ape Zhan Kong sitting on a pagoda. That pagoda seemed to be on the same height as the 20 heavens. In front of him sat a son of Buddha. He rode on a precious elephant that was covered with jade and pearls, looking extremely gorgeous. Behind the precious elephant was a gorgeous cluster of monasteries. Light swirled behind the heads of all the huge Buddhas as they put on solemn and dignified expressions. Both of their debates were rather intense. The words of that son of Buddha from the 20 heavens flowed out endlessly like a river, and the content of his debate didn't stop for an hour. His voice was sometimes reverberating and impassioned, while deep and low at other times, making others couldn't resist wanting to hear in detail. This eloquence could even be said to be a lengthy speech that no one could refute. When that son of Buddha was done, he finally stopped speaking. With a smile on his face, he looked at the devil ape. That devil ape stretched out his furry palm and his 5 thick and black fingers. With a rough voice, he said word by word, "Ultimate." That Buddha didn't understand what he was trying to say and thought hard. After a moment, the devil ape said again, Emptiness. That son of Buddha frowned and thoughts surfaced in quick succession. The devil ape said, have. That son of Buddha trembled and cried out, why is there have when there's already emptiness? The devil ape paid no attention to him and he said, silence. That son of Buddha was furious and shouted, since there's already have, why can there still be silence? Your words don't suit the Dharma. The devil ape said, miniature. That son of Buddha couldn't contain his anger and was about to refute everything when his body suddenly shook. He froze on the precious elephant and he looked dumbfounded. He couldn't say a word. Behind him, a big Buddha sighed and said, ultimate emptiness have silence miniature. Truly marvelous. Every word is like a pearl and every word is a discussion of Mahayana. When 5 words are linked together, they are great and profound. Xianxia, you have spoken for an hour and said a lengthy speech, but it's a pity they couldn't be compared to any one word among his 5 words. You've lost, fall back. That son of Buddha got up from the precious elephant and he bowed towards the devil ape before falling back. Qin Mu was astonished and puzzled. He asked old Ma, Grandpa Ma, does big fella really have the root of wisdom? Old Ma said solemnly, he has much root of wisdom. It's even above mine and higher than Ming Xian. At this point, another son of Buddha came from a heaven above the previous and behind him followed several Buddha with huge corporeal bodies. Just as he took his seat, this son of Buddha shone brightly around him and the dazzling light shone down from the 20 heavens, lighting up everyone in the monastery. As this Buddha's glorious rays covered all, the monks in the monastery were astonished. This son of Buddha has such high cultivation in Dharma. The devil ape raised his hand and blocked in front of his eyes. His huge hand blocked the Buddha's rays and the shadow of his palm was cast on his face. Just as the son of Buddha who had just sat down wanted to debate, he was greatly startled when he saw this sight. Sweetness rushed up his throat as he vomited out a mouthful of fresh blood. He cried out, your attainments in Dharma is actually so high? I haven't even had the time to say, and you have already won me in the debate. After he said so, he collapsed backward and his breath was weak. Behind him, those few Buddhas quickly saved him and finally managed to revive him. A Buddha praised. The topic son of Buddha Pu Zhao wanted to debate was what is light? Never did he expect this little son of Buddha had just seen through his question. He truly has no obstruction in debating. Admirable. Admirable. Qin Mu was dumbfounded. He pulled his gaze back from the devil ape's back with difficulty and looked at old Ma with doubt. He already couldn't understand such a kind of debate. Old Ma explained, son of Buddha Pu Zhao start off the question with light, and he shone brightly with his Buddha's rays. Meanwhile, Zhang Kong raised his hands to block and underneath his palms was darkness. This was to tell him that when there's light, there will be darkness, they are interdependent. Because of that, son of Buddha Pu Zhao's debate was just cut off and he couldn't say everything that he had pent up in his chest, causing him to vomit blood out. From this, we can see Zhang Kong's root of wisdom. Qin Mu was also speechless. He could see that the cultivation of that son of Buddha Pu Zhao was extremely high. He was most likely a Dharma expert on the celestial being realm. Even if Qin Mu fought with him, he might not be able to defeat him. Never did he expect son of Buddha Pu Zhao to puke blood and almost died just from the devil ape shielding himself from the light. The devil ape had already debated his way to Lakshmi heaven. The next heaven was Sarasvati heaven. From Sarasvati heaven, several Buddhas came forward with a young son of Buddha and he sat across the devil ape. That young son of Buddha slowly sat down and he didn't say much. He just held onto a lotus flower and said, none. The devil ape said, have. That young son of Buddha frowned and put down the lotus. Have. The devil ape said, none. That young son of Buddha rose and shouted, are you an ordinary folk? The devil ape shook his head. I holy. That young son of Buddha asked with a deafening voice as he shouted, you are a holy Buddha? The devil ape shook his head again. I ordinary. The face of that young son of Buddha flushed and he said angrily, when my hand have, you said none. When there's none in my hand, you said have. You said you are a holy Buddha, so when I ask you if you are a holy Buddha, you said you are an ordinary folk. What are you trying to say? The Buddhas behind him frowned, and they summoned a few Vajras to escort him down. A Buddha apologized to the devil ape. Forgive him, junior brother. His heart is now in a mess. When treating there's nothing as there's having. Sometimes there's nothing when there's having. When one's heart is holy, holy is also ordinary. The devil ape returned the greeting, but he didn't speak. Qin Mu was dumbstruck and his head was swelling up. He held onto his forehead as he said to Old Ma, "Old Ma, I already can't understand anything at all. I don't have this root of wisdom. It's best I don't listen to it." Old Ma said with a smile, "When I was as old as Zhang Kong, I could never have such attainments. Since you are already confused from listening, let us talk a stroll outside the monastery." Qin Mu felt he was relieved from a burden. The two of them walked out of the monastery and Old Ma took a deep breath. With a smile, he looked at Qin Mu and said, "Mu'er, I'm Buddha now and I'm walking further and further away from you. When I don my cassock and sit on the position of Buddha, I'm no longer Old Ma from back then. In my eyes, you are all living things. But when I walk down from my position of Buddha, when I take off that cassock, I will be that Old Ma of our disabled elderly village, Divine Constable Ma. You are the child that I have watched growing up." Qin Mu suddenly hugged him tightly. Old Ma was stunned for a moment. He smiled and pat his back while saying, "Zhang Kong is learning very fast. Ming Xian is also a good child. The two of them will be the ones to inherit Great Thunderclap Monastery in the future. When that time comes, I won't be Rulai anymore. I will return back to disabled elderly village and we will be able to talk and laugh then, drinking wine and having a feast." Qin Mu asked, "Why isn't the Buddhas of the 20 heavens willing to impart their teachings, or to even lend their assistance to the lower bound? Didn't Grandpa Ma ask the reason why?" "I have. A Buddha told me the reason why Great Thunderclap Monastery could be preserved in all the previous disasters was because we don't ask. Once we ask, we won't be protected anymore. They wanted me to not ask as well." Old Ma sighed and said, "This time, what we used was a dirty move taught to me by Mute. Mute told me to order the monks to chant the names of Buddha and disturb their peace until they could no longer take it. Only then would they talk to you. If we are able to win this debate, the Buddhas of the 20 heavens would allow 3 people to enter the Buddha realm to seek knowledge. However, they still won't let the people of the Buddha realm go down and lend up help. I thought over it carefully, and having 3 places is still better than none." Right at this moment, cheers erupted from the monastery. Qin Mu and Old Ma looked at each other in the eye and they hurriedly rushed back into the monastery. They saw the monks throwing the devil ape high up into the sky, catching up and throwing him back up again. "We won! We have won!" All of the monks were cheering excitedly. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 6:16 Initial Show of Strength. The devil ape was thrown into the sky and his face was blank and helpless. Qin Mu saw this and he couldn't help feeling suspicious. Looks like Big Fella still has yet to come to realization. He still doesn't know he had already won and why he had won. He turned his head around to look at Old Ma and thought to himself. Old Ma is known for being the honest man in the village. Choosing Big Fella to compete and beat the sons of Buddha of the 20 heavens this time is indeed an extremely intelligent idea. Was it really Old Ma's idea, or is Big Fella's dharma really profound? Why do I feel that people of the village are feeding Old Ma mean methods from the shadows? Old Ma had said that the idea of harassing the Buddhas of the 20 heavens was from Mute. Only Mute would be so mean. And the style of annoying people to death and not paying with one's life by sending the devil ape out was more like the idea of the frivolous blind. Blind's divine mind's eyes were skilled in finding loopholes. His spear skills didn't have many transformations or could even be said to have no moves at all, yet he was always able to strike the weak points of his opponents. The reason was because he could see through the truths and lies of all the moves. The devil ape was an ape with few words, and he always spat out word by word, deeply achieving the essence of debating by not debating. If it was a true debate, the monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery probably wouldn't be able to defeat the sons of Buddha. Thus debating by not debating had become the crux in achieving victory. And the devil ape was such a person. However, Big Fella also have a deep root of wisdom. He has astonishing attainments in the cultivation of Dharma. Qin Mu saw the devil ape and his heart was full of admiration. He doesn't know he had one, and he doesn't know why he had one. Even though he was fighting, his heart is completely clear and he knows not of victory and defeat. This is then the son of Buddha Xianxia. No wonder all the Buddhas of the 20 heavens has changed how they addressed him, calling his little junior brother. Come to think of it, since Grandpa Blind and Grandpa Mute had both helped out Grandpa Ma, where have they gone to now? Granny C and the Black Tiger God who had returned from Luofu heaven had also vanished without a trace. This had puzzled him greatly. Eat, strong. Qin Mu stayed to eat a vegetarian meal, and the devil ape kept encouraging him to eat more. He would clench his fists from time to flex his arm, showing Qin Mu how his body could become strong by eating a lot. The vegetarian meal of Great Thunderclap Monastery was mostly vegetables, tofu, and buns. In front of the devil ape was a huge iron bowl that was 4 to 5 times larger than a usual big pot. In it were all the pine needles and pine cones that he loved to eat. Qin Mu ate some vegetarian buns and stopped when he was full. Old Ma had wore his cassock back on and returned to his identity as Rulai Ma. He said to the monks, "The Buddhas has permitted 3 places to head to the Buddha realm to seek knowledge. Among the 3 places, Xianxia takes up 1 place, Ming Xian takes up 1 place, and I'm hesitant about the last place." Monk Jing Ming said with a smile, "Why is Rulai hesitating?" Rulai Ma said, "Senior brother, Xianxia has the root of wisdom. Ming Xian is worldly wise. It's extremely good to send both of them to learn. However, learning Dharma doesn't test the root of wisdom, it tests the comprehension. We need to comprehend Dharma and transform them divine art, turning it into our battle power. Only then can we subdue demons and devils in the future and deal with future calamities. Having the Buddha nature doesn't mean their battle power could surpass the peers. This is what I'm worried about. Xianxia and Ming Xian both have Buddha nature, but they are both lacking slightly in comprehension." An elderly monk said, "In that case, why don't Rulai go over personally?" Rulai Ma shook his head and said, "I'm already Buddha. I can't cross this world barrier and reach the Buddha realm. Therefore, I can only find a person with extraordinary comprehension from the younger generation to go in my place. He shall comprehend supreme and marvelous techniques and pass them down to us. This person has troubled me." The monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery also frowned. Even though Rulai Ma said that the devil ape and Ming Xian's comprehension weren't good enough, Rulai Ma's requirement was simply too high. The devil ape and Ming Xian's aptitude and comprehension were already the best among the younger generation in Great Thunderclap Monastery. To find a young monk that surpassed them in Great Thunderclap Monastery was absolutely impossible. Rulai Ma looked at Qin Mu, who was currently eating. The devil ape grabbed a bunch of pine needles and pushed them to Qin Mu's face, inviting him to eat. The other monks also looked over and saw Qin Mu taking the pine needles over, kneading them into a biscuit before eating it with the bun. "How?" Rulai Ma asked the monks. All of the monks said in unison, "Excellent choice. Rulai's judgment is unrivaled. You want me to head to the Buddha realm?" After Qin Mu had finished eating, he was summoned over by Rulai Ma. When he heard his words, his eyes couldn't help widening and he cried out, "I, Heavenly Devil Cult Master, and I even had a grudge with Great Thunderclap Monastery. Won't I be beaten to death by the Buddhas if I am to go to the Buddha realm to seek knowledge?" Rulai Ma said with a smile, "The Buddha realm and the Buddhas have no grudge with you or with Heavenly Saint Cult. The Buddhas have cultivated to Buddhas before founding Emperor Era was vanquished and they had constructed Buddha realm. Meanwhile, the grudge between Great Thunderclap Monastery and Heavenly Saint Cult had happened after founding Emperor Era was vanquished. The Buddhas are understanding people. They won't create trouble for you." Qin Mu was still slightly hesitant. This is a chance that was fought for by the monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery. If an outsider like me is to go there to seek knowledge, won't it be breaking the hopes of the monks? Rulai Ma shook his head. "There's only hope if we let you go. Going to Buddha realm to seek knowledge is to learn the supreme Dharma of Great Thunderclap Monastery, Buddhist technique that reaches straight to Emperor's throne. I'm afraid that Xianxia and Ming Xian can't comprehend the essence, so it's more suitable for you to go." Qin Mu no longer gave excuses and he said, "When I go to Buddha realm, what should I take note of? The local conditions and customs, do as the natives do. You should be very clear yourself, you don't need me to elaborate. Rulai Ma said meaningfully. The Buddha realm didn't help Great Thunderclap Monastery wasn't because they weren't willing to. It's because they couldn't. Therefore, you have to be careful of an open attack or a stab in the back. Qin Mu was astonished and he instantly understood what he was trying to say. Other than fearing that so-called celestial heavens, the reason why the Buddha realm was so careful must be because the celestial heavens had planted countless eyes and powers in the Buddha realm. When going to the Buddha realm to seek knowledge, these eyes and powers would definitely lay their hands on these monks that had come from the lower bound. One could well imagine the reign of terror within. This was probably the reason why Rulai Ma needed him to go no matter what. Even though Devil Ape Xianxia has deep root of wisdom, his experience still wasn't enough. Little monk Ming Xian has enough experience, but when he entered the world of mortals, he had only joined the military and trained inside. In terms of sinister tricks and situational-based reactions, he was much inferior to Qin Mu. Qin Mu had experienced even more dangers and even faced off with devil gods like Fu Riluo. He could be said to be outstanding among the younger generation for his ability to adapt to any situation. Other than to comprehend the supreme dharma, the other motive of Rulai Ma wanting him to go forth was to protect the safety of the devil ape and Ming Xian. Do I need to shave my head? Qin Mu asked. Rulai Ma said with a smile. Have you seen me shave my head? Qin Mu looked at his head and he saw that his hair had all turned into mounds of flesh. These were the beads of wisdom refined from his 3,000 strands of worry. Rulai Ma said, some people treat their worries as their own obstructions to restrict their own cultivation. Therefore they have to shave their head that's full of hair. However, a Buddha refines his worry into his wisdom. The more worries a Buddha had before enlightenment, the more wisdom they have after becoming Buddha. If Rulai doesn't need to shave, why do you? Qin Mu revealed a smile. I've learned. The heavens shone brightly hung high above Li City. These heavens looked illusory, but looked at them in detail, they looked extremely deep, having space that was immeasurably wide. In the 20 heavens, huge Buddhas appeared and Buddha voices surrounded them. One of the Buddhas shone down from the 20 heavens and a ray of Buddha light shone down from the 20 heavens. The other Buddhas also pointed towards this monastery in Li City, and the Buddha rays gathered to flow into a pillar of light. Old Rulai led the monks to the front of the pillar of Buddha rays and he nodded his head to the Qin Mu and the rest. Be careful of your journey. Qin Mu nodded his head and he stepped into the pillar of light with the devil ape and Ming Xian. That huge pillar of Buddha ray gradually rose and soon entered the 20 heavens. Qin Mu and the rest stepped on the base of the light pillar. They were then brought up into the 20 heavens of the Buddha realm. Qin Mu, Ming Xian and the devil ape stepped on solid ground and he raised his head to take a look. He saw a huge cluster of monasteries, as well as pagodas, Buddhas, and countless monks. Under their feet was a gorgeous mountain and looking down, everywhere was Buddhist countries that were covered with gold and jade in glorious splendor. Just one heaven had just wide territory that was comparable to eternal peace. The Buddhist countries stood great in numbers and they were all living together in harmony. Some monks walked forward to welcome and he bowed. 3 senior brothers from the lower bound. Amipa Monastery is right in front. Please. Qin and the rest returned the greeting and he said, may I trouble senior brothers to lead the way. That monk led the way in front and he said with a smile, senior brother Xianxia's attainments in Dharma is truly profound. I had also listened all the way and I was in admiration. These 2 little senior brothers are. Ming Xian gave his name in religion, and he said, this is layperson Qin of Great Thunderclap Monastery. The gaze of that monk fell on Qin Mu's body, and he said, layperson Qin? No wonder you cultivate without shaving your head. Qin Mu gave a smile and he asked, may I ask which great Buddha is the one that had constructed this Amipa Monastery? That monk said with smile, layperson Qin might not know, but Amipa Monastery is constructed by Dharma King Emoluan. He's a Buddha of the celestial heavens who had attained the path. He has countless disciples and his Dharma is profound. After numerous senior brothers had a taste of senior brother Xianxia's attainments in Dharma, and they still want to experience senior brother Xianxia's attainments in divine arts. Qin Mu's heart sank and this Amipa Monastery was probably part of the celestial heavens power. They were the power that was planted in the Buddha realm by the celestial heavens. Old Ma has given me quite a good errand. His head couldn't help aching. Just as they came to the Buddha realm, the power of the celestial heavens wanted to show them their power, and their intention was definitely not kind. Monk Ming Xian said, "This senior brother, we are here to seek knowledge and not to compete with our divine arts. After we learn the supreme dharma, we will return to the lower bound. We don't want to offend the senior brothers." They came to the mountain gate of Amitabha Monastery, and that monk said with a smile, "Only by competing our cultivation can we know our good and bad. What's there to be offended about? Just go in." After saying so, he gave a push on their backs and pushed them into the monastery before closing the gate. Qin Mu, Ming Xian, and the devil ape looked forward, and they saw a mountain path in front of them. On both sides of the mountain path, there would be a pair of monks every 10 steps. They stood across each other and held a monk's staff in their hands with solemn faces. On the peak of Amitabha Monastery, a young monk wearing a yellow robe shouted, "Pay your respects to Buddha. Kneel your way up the mountain." The devil ape and Ming Xian frowned slightly. Ming Xian asked with a low voice, "Cult Master Qin, what do we do? Are we really going to kneel and kowtow our way up? Our path of retreat is being blocked." At the mountain gate, numerous monks were trying to create trouble in broad daylight as they blocked the way there. "No worries," Qin Mu said with a smile. "You guys don't need to make a move, just walk up the mountain." The devil ape and Ming Xian walked up the mountain, and that young monk narrowed his eyes as he shouted, "Fight!" On both sides of the mountain, the monks swung the monk staffs to smash down on the three of them. Qin Mu's sword pellet suddenly flew out and transformed into a huge ball that was 10 yards in radius. It shone bright, and the sword light swirled around the robe of the monk who wielded the monk staff. That monk stood there naked and didn't know what to do. "Senior brothers of Amitabha Monastery." Qin Mu flicked his fingers, and the sword ball whooshed up the mountain. Everywhere it passed by, the monks on both sides of the mountain were stripped in an instant. The monks immediately threw their monk staff aside to cover their lower body. Qin Mu asked loudly, "Have you seen such a big Saraira before?" Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 617, Crown Prince Yu Guang. In the monastery of Li City, Rulai Ma led numerous eminent monks to see Qin Mu and the rest being fetched to the Buddha realm. Their cultivations were too strong, so they couldn't enter even if they wanted to. Only Qin Mu, Ming Xian, and the devil ape, these 3 divine arts practitioners whose cultivations were not high and not low, could easily enter the Buddha realm. "Rulai, won't there be danger if we let them go by themselves?" Monk Jing Ming asked. "There's naturally danger, but the danger isn't too dangerous as well. The celestial heavens would definitely supervise the Buddha realm and try to control the Buddha realm. Therefore, they will definitely beat down on our great Thunderclap Monastery's disciples and not let them return with their learning." Rulai Ma said with a smile. "Therefore, I had let Cult Master Qin follow over as well. With Cult Master Qin around, there wouldn't be much danger." Old monk Jingming pondered for a moment, and he still didn't understand the thoughts behind it. He still felt there was danger, so he said, "May Rulai please explain for me?" Rulai Ma said, "Buddha realm is still Buddha realm. After all, they are going there to learn. If the people of the celestial heavens wanted to lay their hands on them, they wouldn't bully juniors with seniors, otherwise the other Buddhas will stop them. With the Buddhas of the Buddha realm around, they still need to uphold some etiquette. If they don't bully the weak with the strong, Cult Master Qin can handle all of them. In fist skills, there's this saying, opening the fight with one fist, preventing 100 from coming over. Cult Master Qin is the person who starts the fight." Old monk Jingming seemed to be in deep thoughts as he said with a smile, "And Ming Xian is the person who mediates the situation." Rulai Ma nodded. "Cult Master Qin beats people. Ming Xian mediates, and if the opponent wants to debate and find a just reason to kill them, Zhang Kong will be up next. In debates, Zhang Kong can make them speechless." Old monk Jingming was full of admiration as he said respectfully, "Rulai is worthy of the title of great wisdom and knowledge." On the sacred mountain of Amitabha Monastery, that huge Saraira swirled its way from the mountain gate and up to the peak of the mountain. That young monk standing in front of Amitabha Monastery was surprised and furious. His hands moved up and down as he executed the technique of Dragon Elephant Tiger 3 combat. Dragon-shaped, elephant-shaped, and tiger-shaped divine arts appeared around his body, and they looked extremely overbearing and fierce. Chi! The light of that Saraira drowned him out, and his clothes instantly turned into butterflies fluttering away. His body was completely bare and only his shoes were left. That young monk was originally high and mighty, wanting Qin Mu and the rest to kneel their way up the mountain, beating them if they didn't comply. Now, his haughtiness had completely disappeared, and he wanted to slip away when he saw the situation was bad. Suddenly, 2 beams of light flashed out from that Saraira, and his legs wobbled. He knelt onto the ground and couldn't move. That young monk was ashamed, and he hurriedly planted his face into the ground so other people couldn't see his face. On the golden peak, the figures of the great Buddhas appeared to be sitting in the emptiness above, and they looked down with huge frowns. One of the Buddhas flicked his fingers, and that young monk instantly felt his legs being able to move again. He hurriedly covered his front and back to slip away. Suddenly, a name of Buddha rang out as a golden hand flew out from Amitabha Monastery to welcome Qin Mu's Saraira. It should be a kind of manifestation divine art. That huge golden hand clashed with Qin Mu's Saraira, and actually gave off a loud copper-like ringing, reverberating throughout the mountains. Under the seat of a great Buddha, there was a cloud hanging above the head of a monk in white, and the divine art had flown out from that cloud. He blocked Qin Mu's sword pellet and he said, "What Saraira? It's merely a sword pellet." That monk in white looked at that huge Saraira and chuckled. "Small tricks just to bring out smiles. See how I take away your sword pellet." A lotus flew out from the cloud above his head, and it flew towards Qin Mu's huge sword pellet. Layers of lotus flower shrouded it and wrapped around the sword pellet. Suddenly, the body of the mountain trembled violently, and that monk in white instantly felt the tremors coming from his feet. Before he even heard the sound, Qin Mu had already rushed up the mountain. Because his speed was too fast, there was even mist rising from both sides of his body. Even though he was going up the mountain, he was as fierce as a tiger rushing down the mountain. His fist broke through the air and the thunder rumbled. The entire Amitabha Monastery seemed to have sunk into a sea of lightning. With this punch from Qin Mu, everywhere had thunder and lightning crossing one another. The monk in white raised his hands to receive the attack, and his 4 limbs felt like they were going to be blown apart. His brain felt like it was going to fly out of his skull, and his mind was blown. With a loud explosion, he had already smashed ruthlessly onto the sacred floor. That wall in the main hall had sunk in 1 foot, and that monk in white was embedded into the wall. Surrounding his body was full of densely packed cracks, and lightning was scuttling randomly in his body. Qin Mu raised his hand, and the sword pellet flew back into his hand. As for the huge hand and lotus flower from this monk in white, they were actually broken by his sword pellet. The monk in white opened his eyes, and his eyes were bloodshot and blurry. He couldn't see Qin Mu, who was in front, clearly. "This senior brother, your attainments in Dharma aren't there yet." Qin Mu's voice traveled into his ears. "Divine arts aren't the goal of cultivating Dharma. The goal of cultivating Dharma is to get rid of troubles, awakening one's wisdom, and understand life and death. Divine art is only an additional path, and since it's an additional path, what's the difference if I'm using a Saraira or a sword pellet?" The monk in white wanted to say a word, but he puked out a mouthful of blood and became dispirited. In midair, the heavy voice of a plump head and big ears Buddha rang out. "Fallacious reasoning and harmful teachings. You aren't a disciple of Buddhism, so how dare you fiddle with divine arts in the face of Buddhas?" Qin Mu executed Rulai's Mahaya Sutra, and he greeted the Buddhas with a dignified and solemn face. "Buddhism? Disciple is ignorant. Does Buddha needs to differentiate between followers and all living things?" That Buddha burst into laughter. Glib tongue. He didn't reply Qin Mu's question. In the sky, the great Buddhas sat still. Qin Mu looked around, but he couldn't recognize who was Dharma King Mo Luan. Another Buddha said with a smile, "Buddha indeed doesn't need to differentiate between followers and all living things. However, you stripped the clothes of the monks the moment you stepped up the mountain and even made my little disciple knelt down. Are you here to seek knowledge, or are you here to create trouble?" Buddha also has obscure anger. Aren't you afraid? This one here is Dharma King Emoluan. Qin Mu's gaze landed on Dharma King Emoluan, and he saw that this Buddha was tall and skinny. He had an amiable face and made people felt they were being bathed in the spring wind. May I ask Dharma King, does Buddha needs their disciples to kneel? Qin Mu asked. Dharma King Emoluan shook his head and said, there's no need. Qin Mu asked, so why did you wanted us to kneel our way up the mountain just now? Dharma King Emoluan smiled, and heavenly flowers fell from the sky, while golden springs poured out from the ground. He was about to explain the logic when Monk Ming Xian finally scaled up the mountain peak with Devil Ape Xianxia. Monk Ming Xian hurriedly said, Senior Brother Qin has offended old Buddhas. Disciple seeks your forgiveness. Dharma King frowned slightly, and he was about to speak when Ming Xian hurriedly bowed in front of a great Buddha. Disciple pays my respects to Yamaraja. That great Buddha said with a smile. You recognize me? Ming Xian said, there are the Dharma characteristics of Yamaraja in Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, thus disciple recognizes. Disciple pays my respects to Sagara Nagaraja. Another great Buddha smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. Ming Xian then bowed towards Dharma King Emoluan and said, Disciple pays my respects to Kandra Dharma King Emoluan. Dharma King Emoluan said with a smile, You have already paid your respects earlier. It's time to talk about business. Disciple pays my respects to Surya. Disciple pays my respects to Marisai. Disciple pays my respects to Haridi. Monk Ming Xian bowed his head all the way to Sakra and raised his head. Yet he couldn't see Brahma, so he could only come to a stop. He thought to himself, I can't delay for time any longer. Dharma King Emoluan said patiently, Little monk, you are here to seek knowledge, not to pay your respects to Buddhas. Your senior brother beat up my disciple straight away after coming up and spewed fallacious reasoning and harmful teachings. If I don't correct him, won't my mountain have a foul atmosphere? How am I supposed to promote Dharma? Monk Ming Xian was respectful and he said honestly, Buddha, disciple is bad with words, so why don't I invite Senior Brother Xianxia to talk about the logic of this? Senior Brother Xianxia, come debate with Buddha. Devil Ape Xianxia walked forward and stabbed his kakara staff beside him. He put his palms together in front of his chest and didn't speak. Dharma King Emoluan frowned and he looked at the Buddhas around him. He suddenly laughed. Little junior brother Xianxia, you don't need me to open my mouth. I already understand everything. Qin Mu and Monk Ming Sun took a look at each other, and they each took a sigh of relief. Dharma King also gave a sigh of relief and thought to himself, by the orders from above, I'm assuming an official position in the Buddha realm, and I don't usually read Dharma, so my knowledge can't be compared to the Buddhas of the Buddha realm. Xianxia, this black monk, has no obstruction in debating, paving his way from Yamaraja heaven to Brahma heaven without anyone to defeat him. Even the Buddhas refer to him as junior brother, so if I debate with him, I'll definitely embarrass myself. Dharma King Emoluan said with a smile, This incident is indeed not layperson Qin's fault. They are here to seek knowledge, so we shouldn't have obstructed. However, Dharma debate is merely fighting with words. We will still have to see each person's comprehension in cultivation. Black, junior brother Xianxia's attainments in Dharma are unmatched, so his divine arts must be astonishing as well. Numerous sons of Buddha in the Buddha realm have comprehended the debating talent of junior brother Xianxia, and they even want to comprehend junior brother's divine art. Monk Ming Xian was about to say something when Dharma King Emoluan spoke by himself. This is Crown Prince Yu Guang, and he is my descendant. I was originally Kandra, Emperor of Moonlight Country. He comprehended Dharma, and one comprehension was like 100 comprehension, becoming Buddha on the spot. After I become Buddha, I left behind Moonlight Country, and Moonlight Buddhist Country is Kandra Heavens among the 20 heavens. Crown Prince Yu Guang is my disciple, and his Dharma is profound. Qin Mu, Ming Xian, and the Devil Ape looked at Crown Prince Yu Guang. This person cultivated without shaving his head, and his clothes were whiter than snow. His hair was worn in a bun, and he had a treasured sword on his waist. There was a bright moon behind his head that would light up the area when bright moonlight shone forward through the slight rocking. Monk Ming Xian said to Qin Mu, This Crown Prince Yu Guang had debated with senior brother Zhan Kong and said a bunch of Buddhist scriptures. Senior brother Zhan Kong only said a word and he admitted defeat after thinking for a long time. However, Crown Prince Yu Guang's abilities are truly astonishing. Rulai said he had already cultivated his sword into light, transforming it into a moon behind his head. It's called Moonlight Sword Light. Qin Mu was grateful in his heart as he knew Monk Ming Xian was giving him pointers. He clarified Crown Prince Yu Guang's abilities to let him be on guard. That hump. Monk Ming Xian knelt on the ground again and bowed to Dharma King Mo Luan. He said, "Dharma King is Kandra and I believe you must be magnanimous. My senior brother Zhan Kong had a debate with the 20 heavens and he's already tired. Disciple would like to invite layperson Qin to replace him instead. Much thanks to Dharma King for excusing him." Dharma King Mo Luan frowned and he looked at Qin Mu. Sakura said with a smile, "Dharma King, in that case, let layperson Qin from the lower bound to take his place. Crown Prince Yu Guang has inherited your ultimate arts from the celestial heavens, so he rarely has a match among his peers. By competing with this layperson Qin can also let us see how much have the divine arts of the lower bound evolved." Dharma King Mo Luan could only nod his head and said, "Yu Guang, don't hurt the esteemed guest from the lower bound." Crown Prince Yu Guang bowed and said, "Disciple understands." After saying so, he walked to Qin Mu and said indifferently, "In Kandra heaven, I'm invincible among my peers, and I feel deeply the loneliness and destitute of this place. Therefore I've entered the Celestial to seek knowledge and learned sword in Sword Celestial Palace for 3 years. After he said that, he didn't say another word. Qin Mu said respectfully, "I had learned sword in disabled elderly village, and the one who taught me sword was a messy old man who doesn't have his 4 limbs. I have never gone to other Sword Celestial Palace and such to learn sword. I had figured them out by myself." "Please." Crown Prince Yu Guang stood there unmovingly and he said, "It's hard to see the world in the lower bound after all. I can let you make a move first." Qin Mu held Yang Mudra on one hand in front and held Yin Mudra with one hand at the back. He bowed and executed the overlapping palms of Yin Yang heaven flipping hands. Crown Prince Yu Guang thought he wanted to pay respects to him and he accepted it peacefully. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out as Crown Prince Yu Guang got blown 10 miles away. He crashed into a huge mountain and created a deep hole. Qin Mu flipped his Yin hand into Yang hand and Yang hand into his Yin hand. He flipped them over a dozen times in an instant and bombarded 20 to 30 Yin Yang heaven flipping hands over, destroying the entire mountain into sheer cliffs and precipitous rock faces. Qin Mu pulled back his hands and waited for a moment. He said helplessly, "Dharma King, do you have other crown princes?" Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 618 Brahma Buddha. Amitabha Monastery was breezy and the Buddhas on the mountain peak looked at those sheer cliffs and precipitous rock faces that got blown out. Dharma King wanted to raise his hands to stop him, but the battle had already ended. The speed in which Qin Mu had flipped his hands was too fast, and just as he was about to interfere, Qin Mu had already stopped. He could only put his hands down. The Buddhas of the other heavens revealed looks of astonishment. They pulled back their gaze and looked towards Qin Mu. Third ancestor human emperor's Yin Yang heaven flipping hands was truly a heaven-defying divine art. The speed of this divine art was so explosive and fast that nobody could have the time to even react over. When Qin Mu had executed this kind of mudra skill, it was truly faster than flipping the pages of a book. Suddenly, those cliffs that were dozens of miles away crumbled. The cliffs cracked and the huge rocks fell, landing on the ground and giving off dull thuds after quite some time. Qin Mu was too fast and too fierce just now. It was originally a mountain peak, but now they were cliffs from his thrashing. The cliffs were crumbling now because the mountain rocks had turned brittle from Qin Mu's Yin Yang heaven-flipping hands. However, even though the mountain cliffs had crumbled, Crown Prince Yu Guang still didn't show himself. Monk Ming Xian was uneasy and he whispered close to Qin Mu's ears, "Senior brother Qin, did you beat him to death?" "Not yet," Qin Mu said with a low voice. "I've been easy on him as I was afraid of having to explain myself. His cultivation was extremely powerful and no weaker than Grandmaster of Roland's Golden Palace. He just wasn't as intelligent as Grandmaster, Thus I had used only 80% of my power and didn't kill him. However, most of his bones are fractured. This Crown Prince Yuguang's abilities are truly powerful. I really don't dare to underestimate the heroes of this world. He revealed a look of admiration. Monk Ming Xian stared with his eyes wide open. 80% of your power? Don't dare to underestimate the heroes of the world? Cult Master Qin can really anger a person to death with his humbleness. Luckily, Crown Prince Yuguang had already fainted, or else his soul would definitely scatter from anger. He didn't know Qin Mu was truly humble and he wasn't just acting. After all, Qin Mu was incomparably arrogant and felt that he was the overlord body. If his opponent could be a match for him, they must have put in a lot of hard work and spent countless long hours to cultivate to where they were. To this kind of opponent, they naturally deserved to be respected. As for what other people think, he didn't really care. In any way, that was what he felt. Dharma King waved his hands and those cliffs that were dozens of miles away exploded. Crown Prince Yuguang had suffered heavy injuries as he laid among the cliffs. He had fainted and slowly flew over as he got lifted up by his magic power. Crown Prince Yuguang landed on the ground and Dharma King Emoluan checked his injuries. His expression sank. Didn't layperson Qin had planned to compete with your sword skills? Why did you execute a Madras skill? I can't help but suspect that you wanted to land a sneak attack on him. And such ruthless methods. How is it the style of being merciful in our Buddhism? Qin Mu looked at Ming Xian and Monk Ming Xian hurriedly said, when senior brother Qin used a sword pellet earlier, he got called out for being evil and cultivating an unorthodox path. Therefore, he didn't dare to use his sword pellet and could only use Madras skill. Buddha, is this Madras skill also evil and unorthodox? Dharma King Emoluan didn't reply. When Qin Mu had used the sword pellet just now, he was the one who said it was unorthodox, and yet Crown Prince Yuguang wanted to compete with Qin Mu using swords. This time, Qin Mu had used proper Madras skill, and Yin Yang Heaven Flipping Hands was an authentic Madras skill. If he was to say it was evil and unorthodox, that would be quite a joke. However, he was still holding a grudge in his heart. Crown Prince Yuguang was his descendant and an outstanding figure in the later generation. He didn't have time to execute his abilities and got caught off guard by Qin Mu. He got beaten all the way and through the face of the celestial heavens. The abilities of Yuguang wasn't weak. It was because he had the wrong expectation and thought Qin Mu was greeting him. He didn't try to defend. If Crown Prince Yuguang was extremely energetic at the start, with the looks of Qin Mu's current abilities, it was hard to say who would lose to who. Dharma King Emoluan was looking at the other Buddhas and he said with a smile, even though the Buddhism in the lower bound is forced to locate in one corner, their Buddhism divine arts wasn't neglected, truly admirable. Senior brothers, since they are here to seek knowledge, why don't we just give it to them? The Buddhas nodded their heads in acknowledgement. Dharma King Emoluan smiled at Qin Mu and the rest. This Kandra heaven of ours have Kandra scripture, and what we cultivate is the Kandra scriptures, cultivating the techniques of true Buddha. There are 3,000 scriptures among Kandra scriptures. You guys can't take them away, so just stay in my Amitabha monastery for 100 years to comprehend them all. Once you are done, you can impart them to the lower bound, and that would be a huge merit of mine. Monk Ming Xian's face changed slightly. 3,000 Buddhist scriptures, 100 years of comprehension. Furthermore, they were still techniques of true Buddha. This was clearly trying to imprison them for 100 years. Qin Mu yelled loudly, does my Buddha have scriptures of Emperor's throne? If you want to impart teachings, impart true teachings. If you want to impart scriptures, impart true scriptures. Our great Thunderclap Monastery also has mere techniques. Dharma King's expression sank and he said with a sneer, how dare to underestimate my Kandra scriptures? How rude. I promise you Dharma and didn't even ask for incense money from you. I'm already very merciful yet you still want to be picky. Monk Ming Xian stood there and poked the devil ape that wasn't moving. Devil ape Zhan Kong took a step forward and his Kakara staff rattled. More fake. Less real. Dharma King Emoluan was astonished and thought he wanted to debate with him. He carefully thought over the meaning of these 4 words and couldn't help feeling a headache. Hariti Buddha gave a cough and said, Dharma King, they have come to seek true scripture, so just give them that. Dharma King sneered and said, "They are here to find a true scripture of the Emperor's throne. Where do I have one? Even Sakra Buddha doesn't have one, only Brahma Buddha have one." Brahma Buddha never asked about the worldly affairs, and he rarely makes an appearance once tens of thousands of years. "I've come to the Buddha realm for so many years, yet I have never seen the true form of Brahma Buddha, much less a true technique of Emperor's throne. They are already gaining a huge benefit by not having to pay a cent for the Kandra scriptures I'm imparting to them." What he said was also fact, and nobody could retort. The celestial heavens had already watched the Buddha realm for many years, and even though Buddha realm was under the celestial heavens jurisdiction by name, the supreme scripture of the Buddha realm, Brahma Buddha scripture, was never attained by the celestial heavens. The celestial heavens has more or less gotten hold of the scriptures of the other heavens. They had planted disciples into each realm to become sons of Buddhas, and these heavens were no mystery to the celestial heavens. All with the exception that was Brahma heaven. Brahma Buddha rarely showed his face, and he also didn't impart his teachings. When Devil Ape Xianxia had debated, the son of Buddha from Brahma heaven was also an ancient Buddha that was under Brahma Buddha. This son of Buddha had also not gotten the true teachings. Right at this moment, they heard the name of Buddha, and a monk rushed down in a hurry. He landed on Amitabha Monastery and greeted the numerous Buddhas. "Buddhas, Brahma Buddha has sent word to let the sons of Buddha of all realms and the lower bound to enter Brahma heaven. Old Buddha is ready to choose the outstanding one to impart his true teachings to." Dharma King Mo Luan was astonished, and an expression of delight spread across his face. The celestial heavens has been eyeing Brahma Buddha's technique for a long time, and there was never a chance to get it. This time, Qin Mu, Ming Xian, and the devil ape coming to seek knowledge was instead a great chance for the celestial heavens to attain the technique of Emperor's throne. The celestial heavens has planted numerous powers in the Buddha realm, and there wasn't only him. Among many of the sons of Buddha, more than half were young talents that came down from the celestial heavens. They had entered the Buddha realm to seek knowledge. Crown Prince Yuguang was only his disciples, yet the number of sons of Buddhas in the Buddha realm was uncountable. As long as Brahma Buddha was willing to teach, the chance wouldn't land in the hands of these three country bumpkins and layperson. They would definitely fall into the hands of the celestial heavens. Dharma King Emolun's feelings became refreshed, and he said with a smile, "In that case, order all the sons of Buddha to head towards Brahma heaven for a lecture. What do senior brothers think about this?" All of the Buddhas also nodded their heads. Brahma Buddha imparting his skill was truly a rare opportunity that only once every tens of thousands of years. Numerous disciples headed forward to seek knowledge, and they could also let the Buddhas witness the supreme art of Buddhism. Dharma King Mo Luan swept up Crown Prince Yuguang, and his body faded into emptiness. He sprinted straight for Brahma heaven. The other Buddhas also made their moves and returned back to their own heavens to bring the sons of Buddha towards Brahma heaven. Soon, Amitabha Monastery was emptied out. What should we do to get to Brahma heaven? Qin Mu was still troubled about this when Sakra Buddha walked down his seat and took a stride towards them. This Buddha was barefooted, yet his feet couldn't be tainted with any dust as he walked on the ground. Light flowed behind his head, and he looked like a young monk that had delicate features. He looked at them warmly and said with a smile, "You guys have all cultivate my fist skills." Qin Mu and the rest hurriedly greeted, and the fist skill Sakra Buddha had mentioned was actually Thunderclap 8 strikes. After Qin Mu had learned Thunderclap 8 strikes from Old Ma, he had taught it to Devil Ape Xianxia. After Xianxia had learned it, he met Old Rulai, who felt that they had fate, so he might as well teach him the entire Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Whereas Monk Ming Xian was taught Thunderclap 8 strikes by Old Monk Jingming, and Monk Jingming didn't learn it completely himself, so there was a flaw left behind. Afterward, Devil Ape Xianxia brought numerous demon monks of Little Thunderclap Monastery to Great Thunderclap Monastery to have a debate. No one could be compared to him, and Monk Ming Xian hurried back when he heard the news. Even though he had still lost, he had still achieved glory. Old Ma imparted the complete Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to him, thus he also received the complete inheritance. Sakra Buddha said with a smile, "I'm also from the lower bound, and I had become a Buddha in Great Thunderclap Monastery. You guys are also fated with me. Let me bring you guys to Brahma heaven." A lotus cloud rose under his feet and lifted the three people up. They gradually rose into the sky and passed through the clouds and the lightning. They rose higher and higher and passed through a layer of the world after another layer of the world. Qin Mu clicked his tongue in wonder, and only now did he saw it. The 20 heavens of Buddha realm was actually constructed around an unimaginably huge mountain. This mountain floated in the starry sky of the universe. There were mountains in the mountains, there were seas in the mountains, there were suns, moons, and stars that formed a world, having its own world barrier. And this world was then separated into 20 worlds, 20 heavens, one layer after another. Every layer had sun, moon, and stars circulating, and every layer had land, as well as Buddhist countries standing in numbers. If there wasn't Sakura Buddha bringing them along, they would probably take dozens of years to reach the peak of the mountain, even if they flew at full speed. Sakura Buddha brought them to the peak of Brahma Heaven. Brahma Heaven was built on the peak of this gorgeous mountain, which was also called Golden Peak. There were 10,000 rays, and it was forever daylight. There was no separation of night and day. In the golden cloud layer, mountains peeked out their tips and shone with golden light. It was actually sacred and solemn. Golden light formed numerous Sanskrit of Dharma, and they flowed continuously in the air, surrounding the mountain peaks and creating quite a marvelous sight. When they came here, they even heard a widespread voice that resounded like the ringing of a huge bell. They didn't know if it was the voices of the Sanskrit of Dharma or if it was the voices of all living things chanting that had traveled over here. Devil Ape Zhang Kong couldn't resist praising, "Pot! Bun!" Qin Mu nodded his head and praised, "It's indeed like the corns and buns after you open up the pot. This golden light is like the steam coming off from the hot bun." Sakura Buddha didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This example from Son of Buddha is quite close-fitting. This piece of forest is where Brahma Buddha is living in seclusion. Numerous sons of Buddha have already gone there. Let me send you guys over. He brought Qin Mu and the rest through layers of Sanskrit, and they flew into the center of the Golden Sea. They landed in a piece of forest, and it was extremely tranquil here. Level roads converged, and in the center was a monastery that didn't look very big. Hundreds of sons of Buddhas were already here, and the Buddhas that had brought them here had dispersed their apparitions of Buddha. They just looked like normal young and old monks, and it was evident they were all very respectful to Brahma Buddha. So many sons of Buddha? Qin Mu's heart leaped, and he muttered, "How long must we fight to finally see Brahma Buddha? Can we go by the rules of great ruins?" Monk Ming Xian and the Devil Ape shuddered. They remembered how Qin Mu had acted in the past, and they shook their heads in a panic. Ming Xian hurriedly said, "Senior brother Qin, you cannot go by the rules of great ruins. It's too bloody and violent. This place is the supreme sacred ground of Buddhism. We can't be reckless." "What a pity," Qin Mu grumbled. "If we go according to the rules of great ruins, things would be much simpler. After we finish fighting, we will be able to learn the true scripture of the Emperor's throne, but now it's going to be troublesome." Sakura Buddha asked curiously, "What are the rules of great ruins?" The Devil Ape raised his hand and smeared it across his neck. He then grabbed his neck with both of his hands and did a twisting action. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 6:19 Third Eye Open. Sakura Buddha finally understood, and he said with a smile that was yet not a smile, "Stop playing around. Great Ruins is a barbaric place, and this is the Buddha realm. How can the Buddhas tolerate if you start a massacre here?" The Devil Ape revealed a look of disappointment. Even though his wisdom was opened and he was a son of Buddha that was acclaimed for his high attainments in Dharma, he was still a life form of Great Ruins after all. The life forms of Great Ruins were mostly like Qin Mu. They were born wild and hard to tame, having a wild and free spirit. Even after living in eternal peace for so long, Qin Mu still misses the unrestrained days. Much less for the Devil Ape. Sakura Buddha blinked his eyes and he said with a smile, "Even though I said you can't start a massacre, if someone else wants to kill you, it's also helpless if you kill them in retaliation. Can be forgiven. Even if someone goes after you, there will still be people supporting you." Qin Mu blinked his eyes and asked curiously, "I wonder who is this person who will support us?" The Buddha rays behind Sakura Buddha's head extinguished and became dim. He blinked his eyes and said, "There will naturally be people supporting you, so don't be afraid. Furthermore, I would also like to take a look at Brahma Buddha's technique. This is a rare chance, so I need to mingle into the sons of Buddha too. I might be able to just meet Brahma Buddha. I didn't take in any disciple, so I can only go personally. This Buddha wore a long yellow robe and his body was well proportioned, making the robe look very loose as it hung to the ground. He liked to be barefooted, and when he extinguished his Buddha rays, he also looked like a son of Buddha. He didn't look like a person who was only inferior to Brahma Buddha in the Buddha realm. Even Buddha wants to fight for it? Monk Ming Xian was flabbergasted and he cursed to himself. If you come to fight, who is able to defeat you? Qin Mu was suspicious and he looked at this Buddha and thought to himself, it's the first time I've seen such a mischievous Buddha. Which of the other Buddhas isn't incomparably earnest? Why is he so active? His nature is like me. Qin Mu whispered, Ming Xian, what's the origin of this Buddha? Mong Ming Xian shook his head. I've almost finished the Bible of Great Thunderclap Monastery, but there aren't many records of this Buddha. Qin Mu blinked his eyes and said with smile, Buddha, you said there is a person that will support us. Could that person be Buddha? Sakra Buddha blinked his eyes. I didn't say that. Qin Mu blinked his eyes and said, a monk cannot lie. Sakra Buddha blinked his eyes and said, I'm a Buddha, not a monk. Why should I lie? The two of them blinked at each other and they then turned their head around to not look at each other. Monk Ming Xian felt uneasy. Senior brother sure has big guts to look directly at Buddha. When we return, I must really teach him the different ways to die. Tired? Devil Ape Xianxia secretly asked Qin Mu. Qin Mu nodded his head. His tears were almost squeezed out just now, yet Sakra Buddha had never let out any clue. His intention couldn't be read. Sakra Buddha was also rubbing his eyes, and it must be because he had blinked his eyes too many times, so it wasn't comfortable as well. Qin Mu still held suspicion in his heart. Sakra Buddha's actions weren't like a Buddha at all. He had a very strong curiosity, and the way he did things were full of human emotions. Yet he was the Buddha of Sakra Heaven, an existence that was just inferior to Brahma Buddha. He didn't look like a person from the celestial heavens, and if he was, he would definitely not give them a good look. Yet Sakra Buddha seemed to be quite nice to Qin Mu and the rest, even pointing out that someone would help them. Right at this moment, a young monk walked out from the dilapidated monastery in front and he asked. Devil Ape Xianxia walked out with huge steps and his voice boomed. Me! That monk raised his head and saw that devil ape that looked like a black pagoda. The devil ape looked awe-inspiring and he hurriedly said, Senior brother, old Buddha said you have passed the test. He invites you in. Please follow me. Devil Ape Xianxia looked at Qin Mu and Ming Xian. Qin Mu smiled and said, just go in first. I will find you later. Okay. The devil ape followed the monk and entered the dilapidated monastery with wide steps. After a moment, that monk came out from the monastery again and looked around. He saw hundreds of sons of Buddha from every heaven, and it was truly a vast crowd. Beside them, there were even great Buddhas that were obviously here to fight for Brahma Buddha to impart his teachings and techniques. That monk said with a troubled expression, Old Buddha has said that too many of you are here, only 2 more people can enter at most. Discuss among yourself and see who shall enter. Sarasvati Buddha hurried said, Has old Buddha said what kind of test must we pass to enter the monastery to listen to the lecture? That monk shook his head. Old Buddha didn't say, you guys just think of an idea by yourself and just do whatever you want. The Buddhas of the heavens muttered and they gathered together to discuss. Qin Mu looked at Sakra Buddha behind him and he asked, Buddha, you said you are also from Great Thunderclap Monastery. May I ask how long have you been in the Buddha realm? Sakra Buddha said with a smile, You are trying to worm facts out from me. I won't say. What's this golden willow leaf on your forehead? Is it an accessory? It looks pretty. Qin Mu was about to explain when Sakra Buddha had already taken the golden willow leaf down from his forehead without any warning. Qin Mu jumped in shock and he stretched his hands out to want to grab it back. He had not seen how Sakra Buddha had made his move, but this golden willow leaf was extremely important, so he couldn't lose it no matter what. Sakra Buddha said with a smile, So it's a seal. This eye of yours is very powerful. Why do you have to seal it? Qin Mu stretched his hands out and his face was black. This eye of mine is too powerful and terrifying things will happen if I execute my technique. I'm afraid of hurting people, therefore it's sealed. Return my golden willow leaf to me. No way, Sakura Buddha said with a smile. I want to see your full abilities, so if I return it to you and you stick it back on your eye, that would be boring. Also, who told you this willow leaf can seal you? Have you tried it before? Qin Mu stretched his hands to snatch it back, but Sakura Buddha hurriedly avoided him. After struggling for a moment, Qin Mu shouted angrily, "If anything happens, it will all be your fault. I'll rub all the shit on that bald head of yours." Ming Xian shuddered and he said with a shaky voice, "Senior brother Qin, there are many ways to die. I can teach them to you. You will definitely learn fast." Qin Mu couldn't snatch back his golden willow leaf, so he could only give up. He looked towards the Buddhas and saw that the Buddhas were still discussing. There were a few hundred sons of Buddha waiting quietly. His gaze flickered and he said with a low voice, "I have an idea to take the two places." Sakura Buddha rubbed his palms and said with a smile, "I know. You are planning to rush straight in while these Buddhas are discussing. Am I right?" Qin Mu looked at him and he knew it was bad. He immediately rushed towards that dilapidated monastery, but it was already too late. Sakura Buddha was one step ahead of him, and his body transformed into a flowing light to rush into the monastery before Qin Mu. He slammed the door close and locked Qin Mu outside. He said with a chuckle, "Little friend Qin, thanks for your heads up. I'm in." That monk sitting beside the monastery said lazily, "Only one place is left." Numerous sons of Buddha and Buddhas were alarmed by Qin Mu and Sakura Buddha. When they heard one place was left, they couldn't sit still any longer. Who had entered? Dharma King Emoluan's expression changed drastically and he asked in a hurry. The other Buddhas also have blank expressions as they didn't know who was actually so sneaky to rush into the monastery while they were discussing to seize a placing. Monk Ming Xian stood where he was, and before he could even come to realization, he saw Qin Mu and Sakura Buddha had already rushed over. When both of them rushed to the door of the monastery and he came to realization, the outcome was already determined. Sakura Buddha had locked Qin Mu outside the door. So this is the method senior brother Qin had mentioned. He came to a realization. Truly a great idea. But why did Buddha lock senior brother Qin outside? Wouldn't it be better that everyone goes in together? Qin Mu stood in front of the monastery and he shouted, "Sakura Buddha, you can enter but return that golden willow leaf to me. Without that golden willow leaf, I can't control my power and trouble will happen. Can you handle it if trouble happens?" "I can." In the monastery, Sakura Buddha's voice gradually went further and further away. "Just feel free to rub all the shit over my bald head." Qin Mu was furious, and he was about to say something when Monk Ming Xian's face turned ashen. He said with a shaky voice, "Senior brother Qin, don't you want to know the many ways to die?" Qin Mu took in a deep breath and he turned around. The anger on his face vanished, and what replaced it was an innocent smile as he looked at all the sons of Buddhas that had unpleasant faces. "Senior brothers, I have a very big Saraira here. Do you want to take a look?" He took out a sword pellet and the sword pellet flew into the sky to swirl rapidly. Qin Mu said loudly, "May senior brothers please give me face and let out this last placing to me. I will be forever grateful." Even though he said so, Qin Mu still felt slightly hesitant in his heart. He had never tried executing Overlord Body 3 elixir technique while his third eye was open. Granny C and Blind told him that he could only execute Overlord Body 3 elixir technique without any restraint with his third eye sealed. If his third eye was open, what was the result of executing Overlord Body 3 elixir technique? He had no idea at all. Whatever, old Ma is the strictest to me, and he looked at me like how he looks at his son. I can understand that he had raised me up as his son and poured all his fatherly love into me. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. His clothes and hair slowly fluttered up. Whatever old Ma wanted, I need to help him get it. No matter if it's God or devil, as long as they stop me, I will kill whoever that's in my way. On the heart of his brows, Overlord Body 3 elixir technique circulated to his third eye, and this eye was extremely demonic. His eyelids parted to the sides and the structure of the formation markings in his eyes slowly circulated. Qin Mu looked over and everyone, no matter if it was Buddha or human, their divine treasures were all incomparably clear, showing everything down to the last details. He was like a god of darkness that controlled life and death and looking at his prey. It seemed that even the air was giving off the scent of blood and austere. There was a cruel and headstrong spirit that suddenly poured out from his heart as he said calmly, "Fall back, everyone. If you come forward, your life and death will be disregarded." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 620. Difficult to stop the murderous intent. In the dilapidated monastery, Sakura Buddha was barefooted and he strolled around. He wasn't in a hurry to find Brahma Buddha. "Junior brother, what are you trying to do?" A voice came from behind. Sakura Buddha turned around and saw a sweeping monk that was sweeping his footprints. Sakura Buddha said with a smile, "I don't collect dust when I walk, just like how my tracks don't leave dirt behind. Since no footprints are left, why does senior brother need to sweep?" That sweeping monk said, "Your body doesn't leave a footprint behind, but your heart has left marks behind. I'm sweeping the dust on your heart." Sakura Buddha said, "You say my heart is dirty, you scold me. I can't beat you, so I won't bicker with you. Quickly impart your technique to me and I'll leave after learning it, sparing you from being annoyed by me." The sound of brooms sweeping rang out and Sakura Buddha looked over at the source of the sound. Another sweeping monk had entered from the west entrance, speaking as he swept the floor. "You always want to get my technique. Haven't you seen the reason why I didn't teach it to you? Junior brother, I didn't teach it to you. Thus you have become Sakura Buddha today. Your Buddha realm is merely inferior to mine and your technique has also reached the level of luminous sky. If I taught you, you might not have the attainments you have now." Sakura Buddha stared at the sweeping monk that had suddenly appeared and he said, "Now I can't go up and cultivate to the level of Emperor's throne. That's why I'm here to ask for your technique of Emperor's throne for reference. You said you will teach it to whoever that comes in, so here I am. Teach it to me and I won't disrupt your peace anymore." Another sweeping sound came from behind and Sakura Buddha turned around again. He saw another sweeping monk and now there were 3 of them in this courtyard. His Dharma eyes were unrivaled. When he looked at these 3 sweeping monks, the monks actually looked different and yet every one of them was actually Brahma Buddha. They were the true Brahma Buddha. The form of these Brahma Buddhas didn't look like gods. He was only a realm away from Brahma Buddha, yet he already couldn't understand Brahma Buddha. One realm was like a heavenly moat. Brahma Buddha was immeasurably deep while he was just a shallow pond. That sweeping monk walked over while sweeping the floor. He didn't even raise his head. "There are not many people who can surpass you in Buddha realm. I already can't find a second one. You should be able to see that that child of Qin family has something weird under that eye. I have met that child of Qin family during my dream before. He was swallowing the ghosts of Yudu and when I took a look at him, he even wanted to swallow me. He is the evilest and the fiercest being in this world. I was also around when Earth Count had sealed him. I saw him slowly growing up from an ordinary human that was sealed by Earth Count, witnessing him transforming from a mortal body into an overlord body. Now that you have taken down his golden willow leaf, you will probably cause quite a huge massacre." Sakura Buddha didn't want to hear him say any more, and he just walked forward while shaking his head. You should also know, over these recent years, the celestial heavens has been planting more and more people in the Buddha realm. In the past, the celestial heavens had placed people that had cultivated to Buddha. They were more or less giving face, but now they have been arranging young talents in that don't even cultivate Dharma. They only cultivate divine arts, and if their cultivation reaches, this Buddha realm will truly be dead. I can also see our Buddhas being exterminated and our nest being overtaken. In the future, the celestial heavens will bath Buddha realm with blood, and there will be no Buddha in the Buddha realm. You are waiting and not doing anything, but I'm not willing for the path to become extinct like this. After walking a few steps, there was another sweeping monk that was waiting for him. Sakura Buddha ignored him and he just walked past him. The child of Qin family entering the Buddha realm is a huge chance. We can borrow his power to get rid of all the eyes and younger generations that are placed here by the celestial heavens in one go. You have great wisdom, so you naturally can see what I'm thinking. He didn't walk many steps when there was another sweeping monk. In just a sentence, he had passed by over a dozen monks that were sweeping the floor. In front, a sweeping monk on the left of the path raised his head and he propped up his broom. You borrowing the hands of the child of the Qin family to get rid of the people planted into the celestial heavens is truly marvelous, but this would also bring many changes to my Buddha realm. If the celestial heavens wants an answer, they will definitely investigate their way to you. Just now, the child of the Qin family had said to rub the shit on your head, but you might not be able to take this shit. You still can't forget about the past. If I forget the past, wouldn't the past cease to exist? Sakura Buddha continued to walk forward with a chuckle. Your realm is too high. You forget the past and think that it's fabricated, but I remember them clearly. Don't worry, I won't implicate the Buddha realm. I will learn your technique, and after the shit is on me, I will leave. Another sweeping monk on the right side of the road raised his head up and said, "What about son of Qin? I roamed around in my dreams and I looked at him grow. I know how hardworking he was to be able to break out of Earth Count's seal, from not being able to cultivate to now. Yet you are pushing him to the stage. You will bring a lot of danger to him. Senior brother, I also like to stand at the front of the stage, but there's no one pushing me forward." Sakura Buddha asked him, "In that case, do you have a better plan to preserve the tradition of Buddhism?" In front of him, another sweeping monk raised his head. No. The road in front was a straight line that was endless and the end couldn't be seen, yet on both sides were old monks that held brooms. They were countless and no end could be seen. These faces that were sweeping the ground were all different and there was not one that was repeated. Sakura Buddha walked forward expressionlessly and said, "No matter if you want to fight or not, even if you find the 4 elements are vanity, other people will still want to get rid of you. Not only will they want to get rid of your disciples, your attainments, your life, your tradition, but they would also step on you under their feet and you will never make a comeback. In that case, why aren't you fighting? Senior brother, you can stay here in your grand dreams, but I can't. Are you going to impart your technique or not?" His voice was deafening, but his voice didn't travel out of the monastery. It only reverberated around this monastery. Faint sighs rang out. The path and the sweeping monks on the path in front gradually became blurry, and they vanished one after another. "I will." Sakura revealed a smile. "After I impart, think of an idea to leave the Buddha realm so you don't die here." Sakura was solemn. He put his palms together and bowed. "Much thanks, senior brother." Brahma Buddha's voice rang out. "As for son of Qin, you need to compensate him. He has undertaken a very big danger for you. Other than that, take all the shit on your head. I'm indebted to your teachings." Sakura Buddha hesitated for a moment. "May I dare to ask senior brother, how big is that shit?" "Bigger than you can imagine." Outside the dilapidated monastery, the third eye on Qin Mu's forehead was half open and half closed. With this eye, the divine treasures of the God path and the divine treasures of the devil path actually harmonized strangely and they gradually unified together. In the past, he only used the divine treasures on one side. If he used the divine treasures of the God path, he would need to close the divine treasures of the devil path, vice versa. If he tried to use the divine treasures of both paths together, the God and devil nature would clash. There were many types of vital qi. There was God vitality, devil vitality, demon vitality, dragon vitality, phoenix vitality, Buddha vitality, Tao vitality, and if they were separated in detail, there would be even more types. For example, the 4 great spirit bodies of eternal peace could also be classified into 4 big categories. Each category also has smaller and different categories. God vitality and demon vitality were 2 opposing categories. They couldn't exist alongside each other. When vital qi with the God attribute encountered the vital qi of the devil attribute, they would erase each other. And now, when Qin Mu opened this eye, he actually managed to unify God and devil into one. Outside the monastery, the Buddhas muttered to themselves. Suddenly, Yamaraja Buddha said with a smile, "Son of Buddha Jiankong, we aren't going to fight for it anymore." Son of Buddha Jiankong was suddenly stunned and he bowed. "I've received Buddha's decree." After saying that, he fell back. Sagara Nagaraja Buddha also summoned back his disciples. "Not fighting today. The other Buddhas of the other heavens also summoned back their own disciple and expressed their intention of not fighting. The four elements are vanity, and not fighting is fighting. Let him be and let others fight for it. Even though numerous sons of Buddha were bewildered, they still listened to the orders and returned back to the side of the Buddhas. These Buddhas only summoned back the disciples of the Buddha realm. The numerous sons of Buddha that were left behind were all young talents that the celestial heavens had sent into the Buddha realm to seek knowledge. There were also disciples taken in by the Buddhas of the celestial heavens, and they were all eager to make a move. Dharma King Emoluin said with a smile, "Numerous senior brothers are magnanimous, however. This is a Brahma Buddha's true scripture of the Emperor's throne. How can we not get it? If we don't, wouldn't it benefit the outsider?" Another Buddha said with a smile, "That's indeed the case." Another few Buddhas chipped in, "Two senior brothers are right. We can't just give it that easily to an outsider." Dharma King Emoluin chuckled, "Crown Prince Yuguang, is your injuries fine now?" He had used Dharma to treat Crown Prince Yuguang, so his injuries had basically healed. He had a fervent gaze, and he looked at Qin Mu with blazing fighting spirit. Layperson Qin actually sneaked an attack on me. Disciple really wants to compete with him again. Dharma King Emoluin said with a smile, "People had already say life and death will be disregarded. If you only think about victory and defeat instead of life and death, I'm afraid you will be at a disadvantage again." Crown Prince Yuguang was astonished. Dharma King Emoluin looked at the other sons of Buddha. "You are all successors of the Buddhas here. You should know only of life and death and not victory and defeat. You don't have to pay particular attention to the dispute of Dharma." Crown Prince Yuguang, Crown Prince Emojie, Princess Palong, Crown Prince Fuyun. Do you guys understand? These few people he had mentioned were the Crown Prince and Princess of the Buddhist countries the celestial heavens had constructed in the Buddha realm. With the Buddhist countries standing in numbers in the Buddha realm, most of them were already power of the celestial heavens. Meanwhile, these few crown princes and princess were the outstanding ones among the younger generation. Not only did they cultivate along with the Buddhas, they even enter the celestial heavens from time to cultivate even more profound ultimate arts. Everyone nodded their heads in acknowledgement. Crown Prince Riguang said with a smile, "Senior brother Yuguang's abilities aren't weaker than mine. He will definitely have success in a single move. I'll just wait here and see the head roll." Crown Prince Yuguang walked forward, and a moon appeared behind his head. That was his sword chi and sword light. Wherever the moonlight shone on, moonlight and sword light would fill the sky, and it was truly very powerful. Not to say the lower bound, even in the heavens of the Buddha realm, it was also rare to see such exquisite sword skills and techniques. Crown Prince Yuguang looked at Qin Mu with a flickering gaze. "You sneaked an attack on me and almost took my life. Now that I'm prepared today, I shall subdue the devil." Behind his head, the bright moon was like a wheel, and the sword light was like a huge pillar of light as it rushed at Qin Mu. At the same time, rays from the moon shone in all directions, and those were all sword light. They actually changed direction in the air, and it was obvious he was prepared to cut off Qin Mu's path of retreat. His sword skill was boundless and could be said to be a special skill. With moonlight filling the sky and sword light dancing in the clouds, it was much more exquisite and zen when compared to Yuan Chuyu and Yuan Chuyun's sunset sword skill. Qin Mu opened all three of his eyes, and he stretched a finger out. His sword pellet trembled with a hum, and a thick sword pillar burst forth from the sword pellet. That was a pure spiral sword form, and 8,000 swords flew together while revolving around one another. Even though they had used the same move, the shape of each and every sword was different. The sword pillar was 3 feet thick and 50 yards long. With a sweep, the moonlight that filled with sky was completely shattered. "When I didn't exert all my power, you really think I can't beat you to death?" Qin Mu took a step forward, and Overlord Body 3 elixir technique exploded. 8 voices of ancestral dragons gave off 8 kinds of abnormal sound. With his sword fingers stabbing out, the sword pillar pierced straight through the moon behind Crown Prince Yuguang's head. The 8,000 swords swirled, and that bright moon broke into pieces. The sword pillar pressed down, and Crown Prince Yuguang's body was crushed into smithereens. Monk Ming Xian jumped in shock, and he shrunk back his head. Cult Master Qin has killed again. This is bad. I really don't know why Rulai wanted to send him over. I cannot mediate this kind of incident. Qin Mu surveyed the surroundings and his gaze swept past several hundred sons of Buddha. He raised his hands to grab the sword pellet and he said indifferently,